Chapter 879. My name is Long Xiaotian. Zhuowen, who was wrapped in the dark energy, turned into a streak of light and landed beside the mysterious man. Looking at Zhuowen, who was wrapped in the dark energy, with scarlet eyes, blood-red hair, and a face covered in veins, the mysterious man sighed. The power of the blood demon? The mysterious man muttered softly. With a wave of his right hand, the bronze coffin that was scattered nearby automatically flew into his hand. Boom! The bronze coffin landed heavily in front of him. Following which, the mysterious man pointed with his right hand and pointed at the space between Zhuowen's eyebrows. Immediately, the blood-red energy that Zhuowen had absorbed was drawn out by the mysterious man. CI. The mysterious man's left hand was not slow either. He slapped the bronze coffin and the blood-red energy that had been drawn out by Zhuowen was continuously drawn into the bronze coffin. At this moment, Zhuowen was in a delirious state. Seeing that the mysterious man was actually absorbing his blood-red energy, he let out a beast-like roar from his throat. He wanted to pounce over and tear the mysterious man to shreds. However, the mysterious man's strength far surpassed Zhuowen's. The dark energy that surrounded Zhuowen was extremely powerful. No matter how hard Zhuowen struggled, he was unable to break free. As the blood-red energy was continuously drawn out, Zhuowen became increasingly weak. The blood-red color in his eyes also gradually dimmed, and the veins on his face also gradually disappeared. When the mysterious man withdrew his sword finger, the blood demon's power that had filled Zhuowen's body was completely drawn out by the mysterious man and sealed back into the bronze coffin. The mysterious man sighed and closed the bronze coffin. However, his gaze was fixed on Zhuowen. No one knew what he was thinking. At that moment, Zhuowen had completely recovered. He no longer had the terrifying appearance of being possessed by a demon. Instead, he had returned to his original state. Puchi. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, Zhuowen's face was incomparably pale. Without the support of the blood demon, Zhuowen's entire body was weak and powerless. The injuries on his body also became even more prominent. Barely propping himself up, Zhuowen also saw the middle-aged man covered in chains in front of him. He asked with a hoarse voice, "Who are you?" For some reason, he felt a sense of familiarity from the middle-aged man in front of him. It was a sense of familiarity that came from the depths of his bloodline. My name is Long Xiaotian. I also have another name, Zhuo Xiaotian. My son, his name is Zhuowen. A gentle smile appeared on the middle-aged man's face as he stared at Zhuowen quietly, giving off a refreshing feeling. Boom! Hearing this, Zhuowen felt a rumble in his mind. The mysterious man in front of him was actually Zhuowen's biological father, Zhuo Xiaotian. As expected. Actually, when I saw the nether dragon in the abyss, I knew that you were very likely my father, but I wasn't sure. Because according to the Ryuka ancestral teachings, my father, Long Xiaotian's dragon soul is not a nether dragon, but a two-headed nether dragon. After calming down, Zhuowen's mood also calmed down a lot. He knew that the man in front of him was his father, Zhuo Xiaotian. The intimacy in their bloodline couldn't be faked. It was a mutual response that originated from their bloodline. That's right. My dragon soul is indeed a two-headed nether dragon. Zhuo Xiaotian didn't deny it. With a stomp of his foot, two terrifying dragon roars came from the abyss behind him. Then, two nether dragons that were hundreds of feet long soared into the sky and quietly floated behind Zhuo Xiaotian. A two-headed nether dragon can split into two, and can also merge into one. At this point, the two nether dragons suddenly intertwined with each other. In a dark light, they merged into one and turned into a two-headed dragon that was thousands of feet long. This was Zhuo Xiaotian's true dragon soul, the two-headed nether dragon. Zhuo Xiaotian stretched out his right hand and gently rubbed Zhuowen's head. He smiled and said, "Zhuowen, I didn't expect you to have already grown so big. For the past 20 years, I haven't fulfilled my responsibilities as a father. I'm really guilty. Do you blame me?" Feeling the warmth of Zhuo Xiaotian's broad palm, Zhuowen felt a strange feeling in his heart. At the same time, he also felt a sense of warmth. Surprisingly, facing his father, whom he hadn't seen for more than 20 years, Zhuowen felt exceptionally calm. Shaking his head, Zhuowen smiled faintly and said, "It's difficult for a baby eagle to spread its wings and soar above the 9 heavens. Only by spreading its wings on its own can it truly learn how to fly and soar above the horizon. Father, I'm no longer a child. How can I blame you? Furthermore, I know that you had no choice. You didn't do it on purpose. What reason do I have to blame you for?" Zhuo Xiaotian's eyes narrowed. He laughed and said, "Ha, well said. You're indeed my son. You have such awareness. No wonder you have such a cultivation at such a young age." At this moment, the Lotus Supreme, the arch, was 5 kilometers away from the abyss. He stared coldly at Zhuo Xiaotian and Zhuowen and said, "Zhuo Xiaotian, have you forgotten the promise we made back then? How dare you leave the 18th level and come to this abyss? How dare you?" Zhuo Xiaotian's smile faded. He turned to look at the Lotus Supreme, the arch, and said calmly, "Promise? You're already trying to kill my son, and you're talking to me about a so-called promise? Lotus Supreme, the arch, is it really good to be as shameless as you? Ha! Shameless? You made that promise in front of me and Xiao. Are you going to break it?" The Lotus Supreme, the arch, replied coldly. "Break it? It was obviously you who was heartless first. I had already agreed to enter the 18th level of the dungeon, but in order to prevent me from escaping, you and those old farts of the Burning Heavens sect set up a forbidden array 10 kilometers around the dungeon." Zhuo Xiaotian's eyes became colder and colder. Hearing the conversation between the Lotus Supreme, the arch, and Zhuo Xiaotian, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a thoughtful look. It seemed that there was another secret between the Lotus Supreme, the arch, and Zhuo Xiaotian, and it even involved the Burning Heavens sect. And who was this Xiao they were talking about? Could it be that she was Zhuowen's mother? "Father. Who is my mother? Where is she now?" Zhuowen suddenly asked. Zhuo Xiaotian's face stiffened and a trace of sadness appeared in his eyes. He sighed and said, "Your mother's name is Feng Xiao. She. Now is not the time for you to know. When the time comes, I will tell you." Looking deeply at Zhuowen in front of him, the sadness in Zhuo Xiaotian's eyes grew stronger and stronger, as if he was recalling something unbearable. Looking at Zhuo Xiaotian's appearance, the doubts in Zhuo Xiaotian's heart grew even stronger. Why did Zhuo Xiaotian reveal such a sad expression when mentioning his mother? Why couldn't he know the whereabouts of his mother now? Humph. This emperor did that back then just to be safe. After all, you are a dragon soul martial artist. Your talent is too terrifying, and your cultivation progress is extremely fast. Once your strength reaches the Emperor realm, even this emperor may not be your opponent." The Lotus Supreme, the arch, said coldly. "In the end, you are afraid." Zhuo Xiaotian sneered. "Humph. No matter how reasonable your reason is, you still left the 18th floor and violated the original agreement. Therefore, this emperor had no choice but to use the forbidden array to completely seal you. Don't even think about coming out for the rest of your life." With that, the Lotus Supreme, the arch, waved his right hand, and a fiery red light suddenly swept out from his hand. Upon closer inspection, this light was actually a fiery red token. Burning Sky token. Looks like those old farts from back then still had something up their sleeves. Zhuo Xiaotian immediately recognized the token used by Emperor Qing and exclaimed in a low voice. As soon as this fiery red token appeared, a monstrous pillar of fire erupted, soaring into the sky, straight into the clouds. The pillar of light gradually dissipated, and 2 old men in fiery red robes stepped out. These 2 old men were wearing fiery red robes, and the surface of their robes was painted with lifelike flame patterns. What was even more terrifying was that the aura of these 2 old men was actually not weaker than the Lotus Supreme, the arch. In other words, these 2 old men were also Emperor Realm experts. Hiss. Two Emperor Realm experts appeared all of a sudden. How did the Lotus Supreme the Arch do it? Looking at this lineup, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. It was too terrifying. An Emperor Realm expert was already earth-shattering to everyone, but now, two had appeared all of a sudden. Adding the Lotus Supreme the Arch, there were three. This was too shocking. The two old men frowned slightly, and there was a trace of confusion in their eyes. They looked around and immediately looked at the Lotus Supreme the Arch, so it's Elder Qingji. Why did you use the Burning Sky token to summon us? The Lotus Supreme the Arch cupped his hands and said politely, Elders Fenju and Fenri, that Zhuo Xiaotian ignored the agreement and actually forced his way out of the 18th floor of the dungeon. Now, Qingji has invited the two of you here mainly to resolve this matter. This bastard Zhuo Xiaotian actually dares to break the agreement? The two old men stared at him. Naturally, they also noticed Zhuo Xiaotian who was beside the abyss below. Their gazes became extremely cold. Who are these two old men? Zhuowen frowned, but his heart was shaken. This Lotus Supreme the Arch actually had so many tricks up his sleeves, to actually summon two more Emperor Realm experts. These two old men are Elder Fenju and Elder Fenri of the Burning Heaven sect. Zhuo Xiaotian replied solemnly. Elders of the Burning Heaven sect? Then the two of them should be in the southern wilderness. Why did they suddenly descend to the eastern land's azure profound empire? Zhuowen still asked in confusion. Zhuo Xiaotian explained patiently, the Burning Heaven token that the Lotus Supreme the Arch used just now contains an extremely powerful great teleportation formation. This formation can teleport a distance of 1,000,000 miles, which is enough to teleport the two elders of the Burning Heaven sect to the location of the token. 1,000,000 miles? It's actually that far. Hearing this, Zhuowen's gaze focused, and his heart revealed a look of shock. This Burning Heaven token was so terrifying, it could actually teleport 1,000,000 miles, it was probably an extremely precious item. Zhuowen. It's not good to stay here for long. When Fenju and Fenri want to use the Great Forbidden Formation to seal me, I will teleport you out of the Imperial capital. Father believes that with your talent, you will be able to surpass the Lotus Supreme the Arch in a few years. Ryuka will rely on you to revive. Zhuo Xiaotian suddenly said seriously. What about you? Zhuowen frowned. Chapter 880. The haunting Cyan Emperor. Hearing this, Zhuowen frowned. Why did his father say that? Why would his mother be in danger if he left this place? Zhuowen could feel that Zhuo Xiaotian's aura was much stronger than Cyan Emperor's. It would not be difficult for him to break free from this place, but Zhuo Xiaotian did not, or rather, did not leave the 5-kilometer radius of the Forbidden Formation. Zhuowen could not help but think of the agreement between Zhuo Xiaotian and Cyan Emperor. Zhuowen knew that Zhuo Xiaotian had great strength, but he did not want to leave the 18th floor of the dungeon. It was probably related to the so-called agreement, and this agreement must be related to his mother, Feng Xiao. Father. Why don't you leave with me? With your strength, leaving this place shouldn't be a problem. Zhuowen said somewhat anxiously. Zhuo Xiaotian smiled bitterly. Father has no choice but to stay here. This matter concerns your mother's safety, so father must stay here. Is it because of the agreement from back then? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Cyan Emperor's eyes flickered as he nodded. You are very smart. This matter is indeed related to the agreement from back then. What exactly is the agreement? You clearly have the strength, but you refuse to leave. Where exactly is my mother? How is she? Zhuowen was rather anxious. Zhuo Xiaotian had hidden too many things from him. He had to find out. Zhuo Xiaotian quietly stared at Zhuowen, shook his head and said, You are too weak. It is not a good thing to let you know about these things in advance. If one day, you can successfully advance to the Emperor realm, father will naturally tell you. But now, you cannot know. Whoosh whoosh. Two sounds of breaking through the air flew over. The two great elders, Fen Zhu and Fen Ri, arrived 5 kilometers away from the abyss. They looked down at Zhuo Xiaotian with indifference in their eyes. Zhuo Xiaotian. You violated the agreement from back then, so the two of us had no choice but to use the forbidden formation on you. You should have no complaints about this, right? Zhuo Xiaotian indifferently looked up at Fen Zhu and Fen Ri, as well as Cyan Emperor who was following behind the two elders of the Burning Heaven sect. A trace of ridicule hung at the corner of his mouth as he said, "No need to be hypocritical. The Burning Heaven insignia in Cyan Emperor's hands was given by the two of you, right? Since you've already become a whore, why do you still need a monument to your chastity? I'm afraid that when you set up the restrictive spell formation, you already planned to seal me completely. It's just that I didn't have enough reason before, but now I do." Hearing this, the gazes of the two great elders, Fen Zhu and Fen Ri, instantly became extremely gloomy. With a cold snort, they said, "No matter what you say, you can't escape the fate of being sealed." As they spoke, the two elders looked at each other and formed a seal with both hands. Immediately, the surrounding air became scorching hot, as if it was on fire. It was quite terrifying. Forbidden spell formation. Activate. With a low shout, Fen Zhu and Fen Ri's hand gestures changed. Waves of fiery red energy surged out, forming thousands of wisps of flame that adhered to the forbidden spell formation 5 kilometers away from the abyss. The forbidden spell formation had been set up around this dungeon more than 20 years ago. Its purpose was to prevent Zhuo Xiaotian from escaping. However, the forbidden spell formation that was set up back then was in an inactive state, so its power was not completely displayed. Today, Fen Zhu and Fen Ri planned to completely activate this unactivated forbidden formation, and completely imprison Zhuo Xiaotian within the 18th floor of the dungeon, so that Zhuo Xiaotian would never see the light of day for the rest of his life. Looking at the actions of Fen Zhu and Fen Ri, Zhuo Xiaotian's gaze was as calm as water. He did not stop them at all. Then, his gaze landed on Zhuowen as he said, "Zhuowen, if you want to participate in this matter, your strength is not enough. Wait until your strength reaches the Emperor realm before you have the qualifications to participate in this matter. Father will first send you out of this place. What you need to do now is not to know the truth of what happened back then, but to continuously increase your own cultivation. Once your strength has reached a certain level, you will be able to help Father. I am looking forward to that day." Zhuo Xiaotian suddenly smiled. His right hand grabbed at the air, and a dark black star descended from the 9th heaven, landing right in front of Zhuowen. Then, Zhuo Xiaotian's right hand pressed against Zhuowen's back. A dark black energy was spat out, enveloping Zhuowen's entire body. "Zhuowen, this star can bring you out of the imperial capital. Your body contains Father's power. You can use this power to control the rise and fall of this star. The rest of the journey can only be left to you alone." Zhuowen stared at the middle-aged man in front of him and clenched his fists tightly. He knew that all of this was because he was too weak. Otherwise, it would be impossible for Zhuo Xiaotian to not tell him what happened back then, and even more so, he would not be forced into such a sorry state by Emperor Qing, like a stray dog. At the same time, Zhuo Xiaotian's right hand smashed onto the star. Immediately, the dark black star turned into a sharp dark light, rising towards the sky at an extremely fast speed. "Zhuo Xiaotian, what are you trying to do? You actually want to bring someone out of the forbidden spell formation? Don't even think about it. This person and you will be trapped here forever." Fen Zhu and Fen Ri naturally saw Zhuo Xiaotian's every move. With a cold snort, they actually leaped up at the same time and pounced towards the sky, wanting to stop Zhuowen, who was called Xing Chen, from leaving. "Humph. Fen Zhu, Fen Ri, don't go too far. Zhuowen is Xiao's son. Even if you hate me, there is no need to vent your anger on Zhuowen." Zhuo Xiaotian's gaze turned cold as he said coldly. He's Mrs. Sun. Hearing these words, Fenju and Fenri's bodies stiffened, but they did not stop the star that was flying towards the sky. Humph. Sure enough, Miss really gave birth to an unfilial son for you. If it wasn't for you, Miss might already be the sect master of the Burning Heaven sect. But it's all because of you that Miss ended up in such a miserable state. I will not let this child go. Fenri's gaze flickered. He stomped his foot and actually did not give up. He wanted to intercept the star, but he was stopped by Fenju. Fenju. What are you doing? Zhuo Xiaotian, this bastard, not only ruined Mrs. reputation, he even gave birth to this unfilial son. How can we let him go like this? Miss is currently suffering, but this Zhuo Xiaotian is only sealed here. It's too easy for him. Fenri said in a flustered and exasperated manner. Fenju shook his head, and said, no matter what, that Zhuoan also has half of Mrs. bloodline. There's no need to kill him. If Miss finds out, I'm afraid she'll be heartbroken. Hearing this, Fenri fell silent. He snorted coldly, humph. I really don't know if it's worth it for Miss to sacrifice so much for this bastard Zhuo Xiaotian. As they spoke, the two returned to the periphery of the Great Restrictive Array. The seals in their hands changed again. Immediately, the Great Restrictive Array surged with flames that soared into the sky. This wisp of flames was extremely surging, as if it connected the heavens and the earth. Zhuo Xiaotian quietly sat cross-legged at the center of the flames. The two-headed nether dragon crouched beside him. Zhuo Xiaotian slowly raised his head and stared at the dark star that was constantly moving away. He softly said, Xiao. I finally saw our son. He's very strong and handsome. If you can see him, you'll definitely smile happily. You'll definitely look so good when you smile. I really want to see your smile again. At this point, a line of clear tears suddenly streaked across Zhuo Xiaotian's cheeks and dripped onto the ground. The instant the flames engulfed Zhuo Xiaotian, the Cyan Emperor, who was standing outside the Great Restrictive Array, stared fixedly at the dark star that was constantly moving away. He sneered, Zhuo Xiaotian. You're too naive. Do you really think Zhuoan can escape? He must die. As he spoke, the Cyan Emperor leaped and turned into a green light that shot towards the dark star. In an instant, he caught up to the dark star that was still flying high in the sky. This Cyan Emperor is like a ghost that won't go away. Zhuoan also noticed the Cyan Emperor who was chasing after him. His expression instantly became extremely ugly. Not only was his sea of consciousness in a mess because of the Cyan Emperor, he was also unable to use his mental strength. Moreover, because he had used too much of the Blood Devil's power earlier, his entire body was extremely weak. He had no combat strength at all. If he was intercepted by the Cyan Emperor, he would definitely die. Speed up. I can't let the Cyan Emperor catch up to me. Zhuowen let out a low roar, and the dark energy on the surface of his body immediately surged with a blazing light. Then, the enormous star beneath him actually sped up several times, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a black dot. Do you think you can escape by increasing your speed? The Cyan Emperor sneered. He stepped into the void, and his speed was actually a little faster than the dark star. Whoosh! In an instant, the Cyan Emperor stepped onto the dark star. He stared at Zhuoan from above and said, Little bastard. Do you really think Zhuo Xiaotian can bring you out of the imperial capital? It's simply a fool's dream. In the end, you won't be able to escape from the palm of my hand. As he spoke, the Cyan Emperor's right hand formed a palm. Cyan energy surged out and suddenly slammed towards Zhuoan. He wanted to completely kill Zhuoan here and now. Feeling the cyan palm of the Cyan Emperor getting closer and closer, Zhuowen's expression was extremely ugly. The Cyan Emperor was really difficult to deal with. He actually wanted to kill him. It was really hateful. Sizzle sizzle sizzle. The moment the Cyan Emperor's palm wind was about to hit him, the dark energy attached to Zhuowen's body suddenly surged out. It actually turned into a huge black dragon claw and slammed towards the Cyan Emperor. Boom! The dragon claw and the palm wind collided. Black and cyan energy surged out from between the two, forming a black and cyan explosion. This explosion expanded bigger and bigger. In the end, it shattered the space between the two of them. Then, the space around the two of them directly collapsed. In the cracks of the collapsed space, space-time turbulence suddenly swept out. The Cyan Emperor groaned and actually retreated dozens of steps. He looked at the black energy with a serious gaze and said coldly, "Zhuo Xiaotian, I knew you were hiding this move. It's just a blow with your full strength. Do you think I can't break it?" As he spoke, the Cyan Emperor stomped his foot. An even more terrifying cyan energy surged out and actually overshadowed the black energy in one move. This bastard. Chapter 881. Space-time turbulence. This guy is actually planning to enter the spatial crack. He's simply courting death. Come back here. Looking at Zhuowen's actions, the Cyan Emperor's eyes narrowed. He extended his right hand, wanting to capture Zhuowen who had entered the spatial crack. Seeing the Cyan Emperor's right hand getting closer and closer, Zhuowen's gaze slightly changed. He hurriedly increased his speed and stepped into the spatial crack. Boom! The Cyan Emperor's right hand missed. Powerful cyan energy surged out, causing the spatial crack to tremble and almost collapse. Looking at the spatial crack that was slowly closing, the Cyan Emperor's expression became extremely ugly. At this critical moment, Zhuowen actually chose to enter the spatial crack. One had to know that within the spatial crack, there was an extremely terrifying space-time turbulence. This space-time turbulence was extremely terrifying. Even if an Emperor realm expert entered, they would be in danger of dying. However, this Zhuowen was only at the sovereign realm, yet he actually dared to rush into the spatial crack. In the Cyan Emperor's eyes, this was undoubtedly an act of courting death. Entering the spatial crack, this kid will definitely die. In the end, he'll just be a dead man. With a stomp of his foot, the dark star beneath the Cyan Emperor's feet instantly shattered into pieces. After that, the Cyan Emperor left hatefully. At this moment, Fen Zhu and Fen Ri had already reached the final moment of the forbidden array. The two of them retracted their hands, and the soaring flames actually gradually descended, transforming into a gigantic volcano that was 1,000 feet tall. This gigantic volcano quietly pressed down on the abyss. From time to time, the flames that shot out flickered with a mysterious light, causing this volcano to appear exceptionally different. Withdrawing their hands, Fen Zhu and Fen Ri looked at the gigantic volcano in front of them with complicated expressions, and slowly landed on the ground. Whoosh! A cyan figure flashed past, and the Cyan Emperor gracefully landed in front of the two of them. He cupped his hands and asked, "Elders, has the forbidden array been completely activated? Is it possible for Zhuo Xiaotian to break this restrictive spell formation?" The Cyan Emperor stared at the faintly discernible gigantic abyss within the volcano with fear. Zhuo Xiaotian's cultivation had advanced too quickly. 20 years ago, he was still not a match for the Cyan Emperor. 20 years later, the strength that Zhuo Xiaotian displayed actually made him feel breathless. Don't worry. The Great Forbidden Formation is an extremely powerful formation of our Burning Heaven sect. If a martial artist of the Emperor realm is trapped inside, the probability of breaking out of the formation is basically impossible. Fen Zhu said indifferently. The Azure Emperor nodded. He had naturally heard of the Grand Restrictive Formation, but the pressure Zhuo Xiaotian gave him was too great, so he had no choice but to ask. Qing Di. This time, the Forbidden Spell formation has been resolved, and we have to return to the southern barbarian lands. If we leave for too long without a word, the sect master will be suspicious. Fenju and Fenri cupped their hands towards Emperor Qing and were about to get up and leave, but they were stopped by Emperor Qing. Is there anything else? Fenri asked with some displeasure. The Lotus Emperor's face stiffened. Then, he smiled and said, Elders. How is Xiao now? Is she doing well now? At this point, a rare look of hope appeared on the Lotus Emperor's face as he spoke. Fenju and Fenri looked at each other and shook their heads. Their faces were filled with sighs as they said, How good do you think it will be? Miss broke her vow to elope with Zhuo Xiaotian and even gave birth to a vile child. The sect master is already being lenient by not killing Mississippi, however, even if she can avoid death, she can't escape punishment. Right now, Miss is still locked up in the top floor of the Burning Flame Tower, suffering. The few of us who followed Miss back then all feel sorry for her. It's actually the top floor of the Burning Flame Tower. Elders, why didn't you tell me about this back then? Doesn't that mean that Xiao has already suffered in the Burning Flame Tower for 20 years? Hearing this, the Lotus Emperor's expression became slightly ugly, and a trace of worry appeared in his eyes. What's the use of telling you? Can you bring Miss out of the Burning Flame Tower? Not to mention that you are not a member of the Burning Heaven sect. Even if you are, with your cultivation of the second stage of the Emperor realm, the chances of you breaking into the top floor of the Burning Flame Tower are very slim. Fenju and Fenri shook their heads. Then how long will the Burning Heaven sect master imprison Xiao? The Lotus Emperor asked in a deep voice. The Burning Flame Tower was an extremely famous and powerful prison within the Burning Heaven sect. It was specially used to imprison some of the southern barbarians who resisted the Burning Heaven sect. It was said that it was a terrifying place built by the first sect master of the Burning Heaven sect. Within the Burning Flame Tower, there were quite a few prisoners with cultivation similar to the Lotus Emperor. None of them were able to escape from the Burning Flame Tower, and the top floor of the Burning Flame Tower was the most terrifying floor of the Burning Flame Tower. With the Lotus Emperor's cultivation, he probably wouldn't be able to hold on for long once he entered that place, let alone save Feng Xiao. Forever and ever. After Fenju and Fenri said this, they flicked their sleeves and turned into two streaks of light that flew towards the distant horizon. Very quickly, they disappeared from the Lotus Emperor's line of sight. Forever and ever. The Lotus Emperor's pupils shrank as his body staggered. However, the corner of his mouth revealed a bitter smile. He never thought that the Burning Heaven sect master would be so ruthless as to actually plan to imprison Xiao in the Burning Flame Tower for eternity. Zhuo Xiaotian. It's all because of you that Xiao will be imprisoned in the Burning Flame Tower for eternity. All of this is caused by you. Are you still a man? You actually want a woman to bear the consequences of your mistakes. The Lotus Emperor roared at the 3,000-meter-tall volcano. His voice was filled with endless resentment and hatred. He knew that Zhuo Xiaotian, who was inside the Great Forbidden Array, would definitely be able to hear his voice. Within the endless sea of fire, a figure silently sat cross-legged. His originally tightly shut eyes slowly opened, and there was a deep sorrow in his eyes. Forever and ever. No. I will definitely save Xiao. It's just that my current strength is not enough. Xiao, I definitely won't make you wait for too long. Very soon, I will break through my shackles and head to the Burning Heaven sect to save you. As he muttered, the sorrow in Zhuo Xiaotian's eyes was replaced by determination. Very quickly, his figure was drowned by the endless sea of fire. This damned Lotus Emperor, he really wants to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. At this moment, Zhuowen was in a very bad situation. After entering the spatial crack, he was swept into the space-time turbulence. The terrifying destructive power of the space-time turbulence almost tormented Zhuowen to death. If it weren't for the dark energy that Zhuo Xiaotian had transferred to him on the surface of his body, he was afraid that in his current state, he would have been torn to pieces the moment he came into contact with the space-time turbulence. When he thought of how the Lotus Emperor had intercepted him at the last moment, Zhuowen gnashed his teeth in hatred. If it weren't for the Lotus Emperor, he would have probably escaped from the imperial capital long ago. His eyes flashing, Zhuowen flicked his finger. A black light flashed and Xiao He appeared in front of him. This is space-time turbulence. After being released, Xiao He was originally a little confused. However, when she saw her surroundings clearly, all the hairs on her body stood on end and she cried out in alarm. Boy! What's wrong with you? Also, weren't you bedeviled? Why don't you show any signs of bedeviling now? Xiao He looked at Zhuowen and suddenly asked in confusion. Seeing Xiao He floating leisurely in the space-time turbulence and looking completely fine, Zhuowen couldn't help but roll his eyes. The space-time turbulence was the wind of nothingness. It was said that it was extremely destructive only to materialized objects. However, to a spiritual body like Xiao He, it wasn't very harmful. Spiritual bodies could even move freely in the space-time turbulence. However, as a spiritual body staying in the space-time turbulence for a long time would accelerate the consumption of the spiritual body's energy. When that time came, the spiritual body would quickly dissipate in the space-time turbulence and become a part of it. This was also the reason why Zhuowen released Xiao He without worry. After all, the latter was a spiritual body and didn't need to fear the space-time turbulence at all. Seeing that Xiao He was so confused, Zhuowen briefly explained what had happened earlier. After listening, Xiao He also understood the cause and effect. She stroked her chin with her little paw and said, I really didn't expect that the person imprisoned on the 18th floor of the dungeon would actually be your father, Zhuo Xiaotian. Moreover, your father's strength is even much stronger than that of Emperor Qing. However, I'm afraid that there's a certain hidden reason why your father didn't leave the dungeon. Zhuowen nodded and immediately said to Xiao He, we'll talk about this later. You should think of a way to help me pass through the space-time turbulence first. I'm afraid that the dark energy in my body will dissipate with the passage of time. When that time comes, I will be completely exposed in the space-time turbulence and will only end up being smashed to pieces. Xiao He spread her hands and chuckled, the space-time turbulence is unpredictable and has no direction to speak of. It also has no pattern. This dragon master doesn't know how to deal with it either. Hearing this, Zhuowen rolled his eyes violently. It turned out that releasing Xiao He was a waste of effort. It seems that I can only look for it myself and see if I can find a spatial crack. Zhuowen sighed and struggled to get up. Don't move. Every time you move in the space-time turbulence, the dark energy in your body will be consumed faster. Once this energy is exhausted, you'll be finished. Xiao He suddenly stopped Zhuowen and said. Hearing this, Zhuowen immediately stopped moving and said helplessly, do you want me to just go with the flow like this? This is the only way now. Follow the space-time turbulence and if you're lucky, you might be able to find another spatial crack. At that time, you'll be able to escape with your life. Now, the longer you can hold on, the greater your chances of survival, Xiao He said seriously. Zhuowen's eyes lit up. Xiao He was right. After all, the space-time turbulence had no pattern to speak of. The chances of him taking the initiative to search for a spatial crack or going with the flow were about the same. Choosing to go with the flow could save energy, so this was undoubtedly the best method. Chapter 882. In an unfamiliar place, time passed second by second. Zhuowen was like a corpse as he lay motionless in the chaotic flow of time and space. He had already been like this for nearly 3 days. However, to Zhuowen's disappointment, he did not discover any spatial cracks during these 3 days. With the passage of 3 days, the dark energy around Zhuowen grew dimmer and dimmer, as if it would vanish at any moment. This caused Zhuowen to be on tenterhooks for a long time. It's already been 3 days, but I still haven't discovered any spatial cracks. Am I really going to die in this turbulence of space-time? Zhuowen muttered to himself, unwilling to give up. Xiao He remained silent, which was rare for her. Her beady eyes stared at the surroundings of the turbulence of space-time. Zhuowen could not be bothered to say anything when he saw Xiao Hei's reaction. He continued to lie in the turbulence of spacetime like a corpse. Kid, stop playing dead. There's a spatial crack up ahead. Hurry up and get ready. Suddenly, Xiao Hei's voice rang out in surprise. Zhuowen hurriedly stood up and looked in the direction Xiao Hei had pointed. Sure enough, he discovered a rather dazzling light there. The turbulence of spacetime was gray. It was impossible for any light to appear there. This light could only have come from the outside world. Crack. A clear sound suddenly sounded. Zhuowen was startled. He lowered his head and immediately discovered that the dark black energy covering the surface of his body had actually gradually dimmed. Moreover, densely packed cracks had appeared on the surface of his body. Oh no, this emperor energy is about to dissipate. Xiao Hei, how far away is the light? Zhuowen's heart was about to leap out of his chest when he saw the cracks that were constantly spreading. He had already reached a critical juncture. The spatial crack was just inches away. Was he going to fail at the last hurdle? There's still about 1,000 meters left. With the current speed of the turbulence of spacetime, we should be able to reach the spatial crack in about 10 breaths. Kid, don't move around. Otherwise, you'll waste the excess energy. Xiao Hei also noticed Zhuowen's situation and said solemnly. Zhuowen nodded when he heard that. He lay there motionless like a corpse again. Although Zhuowen tried very hard not to move, cracks continued to spread across the surface of the energy around him. There were still 5 breaths left. The cracks had already spread to nearly half of the energy. 5 breaths. 4 breaths. 3 breaths. 2 breaths. 1 breath. Finally, the spatial crack was just inches away. The light emitted a warm warmth. It was the sunlight of the outside world. Crack. At this moment, the energy on the surface of Zhuowen's body finally collapsed completely, turning into an ethereal black mist. Let's go. Zhuowen cried out furiously the moment the energy disappeared. His foot stepped forward and he stepped into the spatial crack that was overflowing with light. Chi! 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 Unfortunately, just as Zhuowen was about to step into the spatial crack, Zhuowen, who had lost the protection of the dark energy, was completely exposed to the air. The endless spacetime turbulence was like a violent storm and tsunami. It suddenly crushed toward Zhuowen, wanting to completely destroy Zhuowen. Damn it! Divine Sun Cauldron, come out! Looking at the turbulence of spacetime behind him, Zhuowen flicked his finger and quickly took out the dazzling Divine Sun Cauldron from his spirit ring. Immediately, the endless sun fire protected Zhuowen, and the Divine Sun Cauldron stood behind Zhuowen, trying to block the spacetime turbulence. Bang! What shocked Zhuowen was that the power of the spacetime turbulence was beyond his expectations. As soon as the Divine Sun Cauldron came into contact with the spacetime turbulence, the originally dazzling Divine Sun Cauldron actually became dim. Whoosh! In just an instant, the Divine Sun Cauldron turned into a stream of light and returned to Zhuowen's spirit ring. The wisp of sun fire that wrapped around Zhuowen was scattered by the spacetime turbulence. Puchi! The sun fire was dispelled, and the aftermath of the spacetime turbulence immediately slammed into Zhuowen's chest, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Zhuowen, who was originally heavily injured, almost fainted under this blow. Let's go. Xiao Hei appeared beside Zhuowen at this moment. With a wave of her little claws, the ink-black energy turned into a palm and pulled Zhuowen's shoulder. Taking advantage of the momentum, Zhuowen immediately escaped from the spatial crack. Bang! 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 After exiting the spatial crack, Zhuowen discovered that he was actually on a cliff. Below the cliff was a lush forest. Unfortunately for Zhuowen, he was actually in the middle of the cliff, and the cliff was very steep. Xiao Hei, what should I do? Right now, I can't mobilize any power at all. If I fall from here, I'll be done for. Zhuowen hurriedly called out to Xiao He. Kid! This dragon lord isn't much better off than you. Just now, when I pulled you out of the spatial crack, I used up almost all of my origin energy. Now, I don't have any strength to help you. You can only pray for yourself. At this moment, Xiao He's entire body was dim and lightless. She quietly lay on Zhuowen's shoulder. After giving Zhuowen a helpless look, she turned into a black light and disappeared into the spirit ring. Looking at Xiao He's appearance, Zhuowen knew that it was impossible to rely on Xiao He. Thus, he curled up into a ball and tried his best to protect the vital parts of his body. He dejectedly rolled down the cliff along the rock wall. Bang! When he finally reached the bottom, Zhuowen violently collided with a thick tree trunk. The powerful impact even caused the thick tree trunk to shake violently. When this powerful impact spread to Zhuowen's body, it immediately caused him to feel as if all of his internal organs had shifted. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his vision turned black. He actually directly fainted. In the lush forest, a winding path divided the forest into two areas. Suddenly, the sound of horse hooves could be heard from the winding path, causing a flock of birds to fly into the air. The sound of horse hooves came closer and closer. Soon, more than 10 figures appeared. These figures were all riding tall horses and wearing the same black and gray uniform. They seemed to be the guards of some faction. At the front of these figures was a middle-aged man with a face that had seen the vicissitudes of life. He carried a large blade on his back, and his spine was straight. He was in high spirits. He was clearly the leader of these people. In addition, behind the dozen or so people, an extremely luxurious carriage was following them at a moderate pace. This carriage had 2 large horses at the front. Moreover, these 2 large horses were extremely extraordinary. There were flames on their 4 hooves, and with every step they took, a long fire snake would be dragged out on the ground. They were extremely mighty. If a cultivator passed by here, they would definitely be able to recognize the 2 large horses in front of the carriage. They were powerful origin beasts called scarlet demon horses. Usually, scarlet flame demon horses had the strength of a first-wheel ultimate emperor realm cultivator. Some mutated scarlet flame demon horses could reach the third-wheel ultimate emperor realm. However, these mutated scarlet flame demon horses were very rare. Those who could possess scarlet demon horses were basically wealthy clans or factions. It was very difficult for an ordinary person to possess a scarlet demon horse. However, this group possessed 2 scarlet demon horses all of a sudden. It was obvious that this group's origins were extremely extraordinary. Halt! Suddenly, the middle-aged man at the front pulled on the reins and forced his horse to stop. Seeing the middle-aged man stop, the rest of the people behind him stopped as well. They looked at the middle-aged man with puzzled eyes. Commander Yuan. The young lady is asking why you stopped. Could it be that you've encountered bandits? A clear and melodious voice came from within the carriage. A young woman with a cold expression came out of the carriage and asked the middle-aged man at the front. Lady Leng Ying, look. As he spoke, Commander Yuan pointed at the road ahead. There was a ragged figure with disheveled hair lying quietly in the middle of the road. Why would someone lie on the side of the road in this desolate area? The cold woman called Leng Ying also noticed the figure. Her eyes flashed as she spoke in a low voice. Lady Leng Ying. How should we deal with this person? Commander Yuan asked politely. He's just an unimportant person. Moreover, from the looks of it, he's probably been hunted down by someone. We shouldn't meddle in other people's business. Move this person away and we'll continue on our way, Leng Ying said without even thinking. Yes. Commander Yuan nodded. He dismounted from his horse and walked to the side of the figure. He picked him up and unceremoniously threw him to the side of the road in the forest. Commander Yuan clapped his hands. Just as he was about to return, another voice rang out. This voice was much gentler than Leng Ying's. It gave people a comfortable feeling as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. Commander Ruan. This person looks like a pitiful person. After all, it's fate that brought us together. Bring him along. As she spoke, another beautiful figure walked out from the carriage. This woman was much younger than Leng Ying. She was slim and elegant. Her entire body emitted a gentle aura. Although this woman did not have a peerless appearance, her clean eyes gave her a gentle and soft feeling. However, the only flaw was that this woman's face was extremely pale. It was so pale that it did not seem like a human face. Ling Yu. Why did you come out? Your body is not well. Don't come out so casually. As for this stranger, it's best that we don't meddle in his business. After all, this person's background is unknown. Who knows if he's good or bad? Leng Ying came to the side of the delicate woman. She took the opportunity to hold her right hand and supported her as she spoke in a slightly displeased tone. Sister Leng Ying. This person is quite young and doesn't look like a bad person. Now that we've coincidentally met him, it can be considered a kind of fate. Let's form a good relationship with this person. The delicate woman named Ling Yu smiled at Leng Ying. Although her voice was gentle, it revealed a trace of unquestionable meaning. Seeing that Ling Yu was so insistent, Leng Ying did not say anything. She turned to Commander Ruan and said, since Lady Leng Ying has said so, Commander Ruan, I'll have to trouble you again. Chapter 883. Throwing away the failure ring, Commander Ruan carried the heavily injured and ragged figure in his arms. He walked in front of the delicate lady and Leng Ying and inquired, Young Miss Leng Ying. Where should we place this person? This person seems to be heavily injured. He will definitely not be able to endure the fatigue of riding a horse. Place him in my carriage. The delicate lady softly said. When these words were spoken, Leng Ying and Commander Ruan's expressions changed slightly. Leng Ying hurriedly stopped her. Ling Yu. You have already done us a great favor by saving this person. How can you allow him to enter your carriage? If news of this spreads, your reputation will be tarnished. Furthermore, this person's origin is unknown. If he wakes up and does something to you, wouldn't that be terrible? Miss Leng Ying is right. This person's background is unknown and we don't know if he is a good or bad person. If he were to attack you after he wakes up, it would be really bad. Commander Ruan also agreed. The delicate lady shook her head and said, Don't worry. Sister Leng Ying is so powerful. Why would she be afraid of me being in danger? Furthermore, this person seems to be heavily injured. After he wakes up, he will definitely not be able to use any strength. He is not a threat to me. But, Leng Ying wanted to say something but was stopped by the delicate lady. She said, I have already decided on this matter. You don't need to persuade me. Just place this person in the carriage. Commander Ruan and Leng Ying could not disobey the delicate lady when they saw her determination. They nodded and Commander Ruan carried the person and placed him in the carriage. The delicate lady and Leng Ying followed him into the carriage. After everything was arranged, Commander Ruan once again mounted the horse. He kicked the horse's stomach and continued to rush forward on the winding path. In the carriage, the delicate lady and Leng Ying quietly stared at the figure lying in front of them. Only then did they notice that this person was not very old. He was about 20 years old. Although his clothes were ragged and his hair was disheveled, his angular face was quite pleasant to look at. Sister Leng Ying, why do you think this person fell in this desolate wilderness? The delicate lady's beautiful eyes quietly stared at the youth in front of her and softly asked. Although the unconscious young man in front of him looked quite young, there was always a trace of gloominess lingering between his eyebrows, as if he had experienced extremely deep suffering. Such an expression rarely appeared on a young man in his 20s. The weak woman knew that the unconscious young man in front of her had definitely experienced hardships that she did not know about. Therefore, she was filled with curiosity towards this young man. Leng Ying's beautiful eyes fell on the young man, especially his sloppy appearance. Her eyes were filled with disgust, and she coldly replied, "I'm afraid he was also chased by someone to end up like this. However, I don't think this person is a good person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been chased to such a sorry state." The delicate-looking woman shook her head and did not reply. She could feel Leng Ying's disgust towards the young man in front of her. Therefore, she did not say anything and only quietly stared at the sloppy young man. Leng Ying glanced around and saw the black spirit ring on Zhuowen's right hand. A trace of surprise flashed across her beautiful eyes. She naturally knew about the spirit ring. It was a type of storage ring with an extremely large space. Generally, only heavenly venerables could refine a spirit ring. Therefore, those who could wear a spirit ring were either fourth venerables or young geniuses who had heavenly venerables as their elders. Although their Wang clan was quite powerful, only their patriarch and her father possessed a spirit ring. As for her, she only had a high-grade Qiankuan bag. Leng Ying had coveted that spirit ring for a long time. However, the young man in front of her had an extremely weak aura. He was probably only at the ultimate emperor realm. Leng Ying could not help but narrow her beautiful eyes and imagine that he actually had such a precious spirit ring. "I'm afraid this young man is being chased because of this spirit ring. He's so weak and in such a sorry state. He's definitely not a disciple of a large clan." Leng Ying's beautiful eyes flickered. With a single glance, she was certain that the young man in front of her did not own this spirit ring. It was very likely that he had stolen it. In that case, it made sense that he was being chased. Thinking of this, a trace of greed flashed across Leng Ying's beautiful eyes. She stretched out her right hand, intending to take the spirit ring from the young man's hand. "Sister Leng Ying, what are you doing?" The delicate woman saw Leng Ying's actions and could not help but frown. Leng Ying's jade-like hand stiffened. She quickly took the spirit ring from the young man's hand and put it on her own hand. She then turned to look at the delicate woman and said, "Ling Yu. This is a spirit ring. We saved this young man, so we can't help him for nothing. Consider this as a reward for saving him." Spirit ring? When the delicate girl heard this, her pretty face froze. Soon after, she revealed a shocked expression. She had naturally heard of the spirit ring. Although her family was not big, it was not small either. Her father was the current head of the family, and he had a spirit ring in his hand. However, spirit rings were precious items that only experts and monstrous geniuses could possess. This seemingly ordinary young man in front of her actually had such a spirit ring. "Sister Leng Ying. Since this person has a spirit ring, it means that his identity is not simple. If you take his spirit ring like this, it will be difficult to deal with him later." The delicate woman frowned slightly. However, Leng Ying shook her head and glanced indifferently at the unconscious young man. She said, "Ling Yu. Don't worry. Since this person is in such a sorry state, and his aura is only at the ultimate emperor realm, he is definitely not a disciple of a large clan. I suspect that he stole the spirit ring. That's why he's in such a sorry state." When she heard this, the delicate woman's frown deepened. She was well aware of Leng Ying's desire for a spirit ring. As the #1 genius of her clan's younger generation, Leng Ying had wanted a spirit ring for a long time. However, the value of a spirit ring was too high. In her clan, only the patriarch and Leng Ying's father possessed one. If she were to buy it from a heavenly venerate, the price would be too high. It was not worth it. Therefore, Leng Ying had never been able to obtain the spirit ring she wanted. Now that a spirit ring had suddenly appeared in front of her, how could she not be moved? Just as the delicate woman was about to say something, Leng Ying interrupted her and said, "Ling Yu. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Seeing Leng Ying's firm attitude, the delicate woman could only sigh inwardly. Leng Ying was not her subordinate, so she had no right to order Leng Ying around. Therefore, the delicate woman could only watch as Leng Ying put the spirit ring on her finger. After slowly waking up, Zhuowen felt dizzy. When he opened his eyes, he discovered that he was in an extremely elegant private room. Furthermore, he could clearly feel that the private room he was in was constantly rolling forward. It was very obvious that this private room was within the carriage. Zhuowen remembered that he had walked out of the spatial turbulence with great difficulty. Unfortunately, he had landed in the middle of a cliff. After that, he had rolled down the cliff and slammed into a tree trunk. After that, he had fainted. Now that he had woken up, the unfamiliar environment in front of him caused Zhuowen to be filled with confusion. He struggled to prop himself up. Only then did Zhuowen notice that there were actually two people in the carriage. Moreover, both of them were women. One of the women had a warm smile on her beautiful face, but her face was sickly pale. Her entire body exuded a delicate beauty. The other woman's face was cold, and her beautiful eyes were filled with a trace of arrogance. She was extremely cold. "You're awake." The delicate woman smiled and said. As for Leng Ying, she coldly glanced at Zhuowen and did not say a word. It was as if Zhuowen owed her money. Zhuowen did not mind Leng Ying's cold attitude. He looked at the delicate woman and said with a smile, "Did something happen when I was unconscious? Did you save me?" "Yes. Originally, we were passing by this forest by accident. We just happened to see you lying in front of the road, so we saved you," the delicate woman admitted generously. Hearing this, Zhuowen cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for saving my life. May I know your name?" "He. My name is Ruan Lingyu. You can call me Lingyu. This is Sister Leng Ying. She is the #1 expert in the younger generation of the Ruan clan." The delicate woman pointed at the cold woman beside her and introduced her. "My name is Zhuowen. I am a cultivator who likes to travel." Nodding his head, Zhuowen casually greeted Leng Ying. Soon after, he began to converse with Ruan Lingyu. This Leng Ying did not have a pleasant expression on her face the moment he woke up. Zhuowen could ignore her, but he could not ask for a snub. Furthermore, Zhuowen also discovered that his cultivation had dropped to the level of an ultimate emperor realm cultivator. He instantly felt extremely helpless. He knew that the reason for this was mainly because he had used up too much energy when he had turned into a demon. This caused his cultivation to drop again and again. If Shuo Xiaotian had not extracted the blood demon's energy from his body in time, Zhuowen's fate would have been unimaginable. At that time, his cultivation might have been crippled and he might not even be able to keep his life. Although his cultivation had dropped drastically, Zhuowen was still at the initial stage of the Supreme Being realm. If he had enough energy, he could definitely cultivate back to the initial stage of the Supreme Being realm in a short period of time. There are still the nascent souls of the 5 heavenly sovereigns in the spirit ring. If I absorb the energy of the nascent souls of these heavenly sovereigns, my cultivation will quickly recover. Zhuowen muttered in his heart. He was not discouraged by the drop in his cultivation. He gently tapped his right hand and suddenly discovered something. He hurriedly looked at his right ring finger. He saw that there was no sign of a spirit ring on his ring finger. In an instant, Zhuowen's face darkened. He raised his head slightly and quickly noticed that there was a spirit ring on Leng Ying's right finger. This spirit ring was exactly the same as his. Without a doubt, Leng Ying had stolen his spirit ring. Chapter 884. Yan Xian Empire. Leng Ying's eyes darkened when she saw Zhuowen staring at her. Her expression was a little ugly. This young man in front of her was really impudent. He was actually staring at her without restraint. Zhuowen didn't retract his gaze because of Leng Ying's words. Instead, he pointed at Leng Ying's finger with his right hand and asked, "May I ask Miss Leng Ying, where did you get the spirit ring on your finger?" Leng Ying's beautiful eyes narrowed, but soon returned to normal. She glanced at Zhuowen indifferently and said arrogantly, "Of course it's mine." Zhuowen's eyes darkened when he heard this. He said coldly, then why is your spirit ring exactly the same as mine? My spirit ring is missing, but the spirit ring on your finger is exactly the same as mine. How do you explain this? Leng Ying's beautiful eyes narrowed, and her expression was a little ugly. She didn't expect Zhuowen to question her as soon as he woke up. Her expression was a little ugly, and she was even a little flustered. Sister Leng Ying, the spirit ring originally belonged to Zhuowen. You should return it to him. Ruan Lingyu couldn't stand it anymore and said to the ugly Leng Ying. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows. His spirit ring was indeed taken by Leng Ying. At the same time, his impression of Ruan Lingyu improved greatly. At this time, she didn't hide the truth from Zhuowen. Therefore, Zhuowen thought more highly of Ruan Lingyu. Moreover, what surprised Zhuowen was that Ruan Lingyu didn't have any cultivation. Moreover, with her sickly appearance, Ruan Lingyu was even weaker than an ordinary person. What exactly happened to her? Leng Ying's expression was extremely ugly when Ruan Lingyu exposed her. She glared at Ruan Lingyu fiercely, then looked at Zhuowen and said indifferently, "You're just a piece of trash at the ultimate emperor realm. What right do you have to possess a spirit ring? This spirit ring will only be snatched away by others if it's on you. You don't have the ability to protect the spirit ring at all. I'm already an ultimate emperor realm third wheel. Keeping it on me is the best choice." Hearing this, Zhuowen's face turned cold as he coldly said, "You stole my things, and you still have reason? No matter how dignified your words are, you still stole my spirit ring, didn't you?" Leng Ying snorted coldly and said, "So what if I am? We saved your life and even allowed you to enter the carriage. Isn't it natural for us to take your spirit ring as a reward? If it weren't for us, you would have already died on the road. How could you be sitting so comfortably in the carriage right now? Now, not only are you not grateful, you're questioning me. Don't you feel ashamed? If you mention this matter again, don't blame me for being merciless and kicking you out of the carriage." Zhuowen's face darkened. This Leng Ying was truly shameless. The person who had saved him on the road wasn't Leng Ying, but Ruan Lingyu, who was beside her. Now, this Leng Ying was taking all the credit for saving his life and didn't even ask Ruan Lingyu about it. This woman was truly shameless. The person who saved me wasn't you, Miss Leng Ying, but Miss Lingyu. According to what you've said, you saved my life, so there's nothing wrong with giving away the spirit ring. However, what does this have to do with you, Miss Leng Ying? Everything was done by Miss Lingyu. What's the meaning of you taking the spirit ring for yourself? I can give away the spirit ring, but it's not for you. It's for Miss Lingyu. Zhuowen said coldly. Leng Ying glanced indifferently at Zhuowen, then said, "Lingyu is my good sister. We're as close as brothers. Moreover, Lingyu has no cultivation. After all, a man's wealth is his own ruin. Since Lingyu has no cultivation, leaving the spirit ring with her will only harm her. Thus, I'll keep it for the time being." Leng Ying's words were full of righteousness, as if she was thinking for Ruan Lingyu, but in reality, she was planning to keep the spirit ring for herself. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Ruan Lingyu had no cultivation, so it was useless for her to have the spirit ring. Leng Ying was helping her keep the spirit ring for herself. "Now, I order you to erase the imprint on the spirit ring. I'm going to make this spirit ring recognize me as its owner." Leng Ying suddenly ordered Zhuowen. Zhuowen stared coldly at Leng Ying. She had gone too far. She had taken Zhuowen's spirit ring without his consent. Now, she was even planning to force Zhuowen to remove the imprint on his spirit ring so that Leng Ying could recognize him as her master. Was she really treating him like a servant? What about the things in the spirit ring? Zhuowen asked coldly, narrowing his eyes. Leng Ying sneered and said, "You want to take back the things in the spirit ring? You think too highly of yourself. The things in the spirit ring can be considered as our reward for saving you. Stop talking nonsense and quickly remove the imprint on the spirit ring." However, Zhuowen smiled and said coldly, "Sorry. Although I, Zhuowen, am grateful to Miss Lingyu for saving my life, what does that have to do with you? What right do you have to make me remove the imprint on the spirit ring? What right do you have? Oh. What a stubborn fellow. Now, I'll give you a chance. Remove the imprint on the spirit ring or get lost. Leng Ying said coldly, her voice filled with coldness. Enough. Sister Leng Ying, don't go overboard. After all, Zhuowen is a guest. How can you force him like this? Suddenly, Huan Lingyu, who had been silent, exploded. A rare trace of anger appeared on her gentle face. Even she, as the person involved, could not stand Leng Ying's actions. Therefore, Huan Lingyu finally exploded. Huan Lingyu's sudden outburst stunned both Leng Ying and Zhuowen. Then, Leng Ying came back to her senses and pointed at Zhuowen, saying, Lingyu, don't be fooled by this person. We did save his life, but not only is he not grateful, he's not even willing to cooperate. He's not even willing to hand over his spirit ring. It's clear that he's not grateful at all. All right. I was the one who saved young Master Zhua. Sister Leng Ying, aren't you going overboard by forcing young Master Zhua like this? I advise you to return the spirit ring to young Master Zhua. Huan Lingyu said seriously. However, Leng Ying shook her head and said firmly, my actions are only to protect this spirit ring. This Zhuowen is too weak. If it is on him, it will be taken away by others sooner or later. It is better for it to be on me. Alright, since Lingyu has spoken, I won't force this piece of trash anymore. I will go to the other room to rest. As she spoke, Leng Ying glared fiercely at Zhuowen. Then, she left the room and went to the room next door. The room that Huan Lingyu was in was very large. There were 3 rooms in it. 2 of them were Leng Ying and Huan Lingyu's bedroom. The last one was equivalent to the living room, which was the room that Zhuowen and Huan Lingyu were in. Seeing Leng Ying leave without a word, Huan Lingyu said apologetically to Zhuowen, young Master Zhua. I am really sorry for causing you so much trouble. Sister Leng Ying is not a bad person. She just wanted a spirit ring too much and impulsively took young Master's spirit ring. When we return to the Ruan family in Yen City, I will ask my father to take back Sister Leng Ying's spirit ring and return it to young Master. Hearing Huan Lingyu's sincere apology, the anger in Zhuowen's heart dissipated. At the same time, he sighed inwardly that Huan Lingyu was too naive. If they really returned to their family, it would be even more impossible to get the spirit ring back. Now that he was heavily injured and his cultivation had dropped to the level of an ultimate Emperor Realm cultivator, his strength was much weaker than Leng Ying's. Therefore, Zhuowen did not rashly try to snatch the spirit ring. After all, other than Leng Ying, there were many other guards with strong auras outside. If he did not succeed, he would definitely be attacked from both sides. At that time, with his current condition, he would really be in a desperate situation. Fortunately, the spirit ring had recognized him as its owner. Even if Leng Ying obtained the spirit ring, she would not be able to open it. After all, the spirit ring contained all of Zhuowen's important things. Whether it was the nascent souls of the 5 heavenly sovereigns, the divine sun cauldron, or other heavenly and earthly soul treasures of various sizes, they were all a huge fortune. Most importantly, Xiao He was also in the spirit ring. Looks like I need to fully recover from my injuries and recover my strength before reaching that so-called Yen City. At that time, I will snatch the spirit ring from Leng Ying. As he secretly planned in his heart, Zhuowen sat in front of Huan Lingyu and asked, Miss Lingyu, what kind of place is Yen City? Why have I never heard of it? Right now, Zhuowen's first priority was to find out where exactly he was. After all, the space-time turbulence had the ability to travel through space. Perhaps he had only drifted for a few days, but once he came out, he might have been millions of miles away. You don't know about Yen City? Huan Lingyu's beautiful eyes widened as she asked in disbelief. Scratching his head, Zhuowen said somewhat embarrassedly, I originally came from a hidden place and am not very familiar with the outside world. Therefore, I would like to ask Miss Lingyu to tell me a little about it. Ruan Lingyu nodded and did not doubt Zhuowen's words. There were many hidden cultivators like Zhuowen in the Heavenly Armor continent. These cultivators cultivated in seclusion in order to pursue a higher realm. Some of these hidden cultivators even formed a powerful force. Obviously, Ruan Lingyu thought that Zhuowen was a junior of these hidden cultivators who had just come out to train. Therefore, he did not know anything about the outside world. Yan City is the central city of the Yan Xian Empire. It is the most prosperous city in the entire empire. There are countless experts and forces there. It is extremely lively. Our Ruan family is one of the small family forces in Yan City. Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He did not expect that he would actually come to the territory of the Yan Xian Empire. He was naturally not unfamiliar with the Yan Xian Empire. Its territory was about the same size as the Qing Xian Empire. Moreover, the two empires were close to each other. Therefore, the armies of the two empires would occasionally have some small conflicts at the border. Although the Yan Xian Empire was right beside the Qing Xian Empire, the actual distance was extremely far. If a cultivator relied on flying, it would probably take several years to reach the territory of the Yan Xian Empire. Chapter 885. Strange cold air. Yan City's status in the Yanxian Empire was equivalent to the royal capital's status in the Qing Xian Empire. It was the most important hub in the entire royal capital. There were countless experts and practitioners in the city, and it was basically impossible to see any ordinary people. In Yan City, large and small factions were scattered all over, and it was extremely prosperous. Ruan Lingyu's Ruan clan was considered a mediocre clan in Yan City. However, it was still considered a faction and was much better than some lone practitioners. From Ruan Lingyu's words, Zhuowen discovered that the factions in Yan City were very different from the Qing Xian Empire's royal capital. There were 7 major factions in the Qing Xian Empire's royal capital. Furthermore, among the 7 major factions, 5 of them belonged to clans while the other 2 were the Azure Dragon Branch Hall and the royal family. However, in the Yanxian Empire, the clan's influence was much smaller. The sect's influence was much stronger than the clan's influence, and the most representative of them were the 5 major factions in Yan City. Among the 5 great powers, the Yanxian Empire's royal family was naturally ranked first. As for the other 4 great powers, they were actually all sections. They were respectively the Clear Void Valley, the Heaven Peak Devil Palace, the Myriad Star Palace, and the 5 Elements sect. Among the 5 major factions, the royal family was ranked first because of the existence of the Yan Emperor. The other 4 sects' influence was on par with each other. Below the 5 major factions, there were countless clans and factions in Yan City. These clans and factions varied in size, and the competition between them was extremely intense. Among them, Ruan Lingyu's Ruan clan was considered the lowest tier among these clans and factions. According to Ruan Lingyu, among the 5 major factions in Yan City, other than the royal family, the other 4 sects' influence was basically open to the public to recruit disciples. Every year, they would recruit some talented geniuses from the various clans and factions in Yan City. This kind of recruitment of geniuses did not receive any resistance from the various clans in Yan City. Instead, it was very popular because the resources within the 4 sects were many times more abundant than the clans. If the geniuses within the clans were recruited by the 4 sects, they would receive more resources and nurturing than the clans. The speed of their cultivation would also be much faster than in the clans. In Yan City, many clans took pride in the number of their disciples that joined their sections. Even though they gave their clans geniuses to their sects, the roots of those geniuses were still in their clans. Once those geniuses matured, they would naturally take care of their own clans, allowing their clans to face even greater competition in Yan City. Zhuowen's eyes flickered as he listened to Ruan Lingyu's narration. His expression changed slightly. The Yanxian Empire was indeed very different from the Qing Xian Empire. Just the sects alone were rare in the Qing Xian Empire. After all, the Qing Xian Empire was still dominated by clans. Zhuo Wen's heart was filled with curiosity towards this new distribution of forces. Miss Lingyu, since the entrance exam for the Excellent Deity Academy is about to begin, I wonder if Yen City will send geniuses to the Excellent Deity Academy to participate in the entrance exam? Zhuowen asked again. Right now, he was most concerned about the Jia Shan College's entrance examination. Although he had obtained a slot from the Qing Xian Empire, he had already fallen out with the Qing Emperor. He was afraid that the slot from the Qing Xian Empire would not land on his head. Furthermore, the location of the Excellent Deity Academy was extremely mysterious. If Zhuowen were to search for it himself, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Therefore, he could only think of a way from Yen City. After all, the Yanxian Empire's influence was not any weaker than the Qing Xian Empire. There would probably be some Excellent Deity Academy's entrance exam, and the Yen Emperor would definitely know the exact location of the Excellent Deity Academy. Therefore, if Zhuowen wanted to enter the Excellent Deity Academy, he could only rely on the Yanxian Empire's route. Wan Lingyu looked at Zhuowen in astonishment. She was a little puzzled as to why Zhuowen had asked this. However, she did not suspect too much and softly replied, Yen City has the Yen Emperor guarding it. Naturally, there will be a quota for the Excellent Deity Academy's entrance exam. However, there are only 5 quotas and only the most talented youths in Yen City will be able to obtain them. These 5 people had already been decided 3 months ago. Young Master Zhuo, why are you suddenly asking about this? Zhuowen awkwardly scratched his head and said, I'm just curious. After all, the Excellent Deity Academy is extremely famous in the Eastern lands. Who wouldn't want to enter such a superpower to cultivate? Hearing this, Wan Lingyu's beautiful eyes flashed with a trace of yearning. She softly muttered, that's right. It is said that the Excellent Deity Academy is the most relaxed among all the superpowers in the Eastern lands. It is said that they have never restricted the freedom of their students. If it wasn't for the fact that I was born unable to cultivate, I would have also tried my hand at the gathering of geniuses 3 months ago. The geniuses who are able to obtain a quota are the most dazzling stars in the entire Yen City. They are existences that receive the attention of tens of thousands of people. Zhuowen nodded his head. What Wan Lingyu said was correct. Just like the Qing Xian Empire's imperial capital's Qing Huang leaderboard, the top 5 also had the qualifications to enter the Excellent Deity Academy. The geniuses who obtained the 5 quotas were indeed existences that received the support and envy of countless people. Miss Lingyu, may I ask, I see that your face is unnaturally pale and your body is weak. There are no fluctuations of yuan power at all. Could it be that you were born like this? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Wan Lingyu was startled. A trace of sadness appeared on her charming face and she fell into a rare silence. Seeing this, Zhuowen dryly laughed and said, it seems that this is Miss Lingyu's private matter and it is not convenient for you to say it. It is I, Zhuowen, who has been presumptuous. Wan Lingyu shook her head and said, actually, it is not considered a private matter. There is no harm in telling young Master Zhuo. This matter started from when I was young. Thus, Wan Lingyu slowly began to recount the events of the past. As it turned out, before Wan Lingyu was 10 years old, her martial talent was extremely powerful. At such a young age, her cultivation was already stronger than some of the older generation. At that time, Wan Lingyu was almost designated as the next patriarch of the Wan clan. It could be said that Wan Lingyu was the center of attention in the Wan clan at that time. She was extremely dazzling and had a small reputation in Yen City. However, when she was 10 years old, Wan Lingyu suddenly fell seriously ill. Her entire body was filled with an extreme cold. That cold qi was extremely terrifying and actually froze Wan Lingyu's room into an ice house. At that time, many experts of the Wan clan entered Wan Lingyu's room in order to save her. Unfortunately, the cold chi was too terrifying and the experts of the Ruan clan were all frozen to death in Ruan Lingyu's room. Only Ruan Lingyu's father was strong enough to escape with serious injuries. After 3 days and 3 nights, the cold chi erupting from Ruan Lingyu's body finally stopped. Ruan Lingyu also awoke from her coma. However, from then on, Ruan Lingyu's martial talent seemed to have evaporated into thin air. No matter how Ruan Lingyu cultivated, the dantian in her body was unable to accumulate any yuan power, let alone cultivate yuan power. From then on, Ruan Lingyu had completely become an ordinary person. In fact, her physique was even worse than an ordinary person's. This was also why Ruan Lingyu's face was abnormally pale and sickly all year round, as if she had no bones. At this point, a bitter smile appeared on Ruan Lingyu's pretty face as she said, "Because of me, many experts of the Ruan clan have fallen." Originally, the Ruan clan's power in Yen City was pretty good, but from then on, it gradually declined. Young Master Zhua. Don't you think that I am a jinx? At this point, Ruan Lingyu's pretty face was filled with a bitter smile. Zhuowen's eyebrows slightly furrowed as he stared at Ruan Lingyu, his eyes flickering. What happened to Ruan Lingyu's body was truly strange. To think that a terrifying cold chi would erupt from her body. "Miss Lingyu, can you extend your hand so that I can inspect it?" Zhuowen suddenly asked Ruan Lingyu. Ruan Lingyu was taken aback. Her pretty face blushed like a ripe red apple as she lowered her head and did not speak. When he saw Ruan Lingyu's reaction, Zhuowen knew that the former had misunderstood his intentions. He coughed dryly and said, "Miss Lingyu, please don't misunderstand. I have done some research on cold chi in the past. Perhaps I can tell the origin of the cold chi in your body from your body." When she heard these words, Ruan Lingyu knew that she had misunderstood Zhuowen's words. The bashfulness on her face grew even more intense as she softly said, "Young Master Zhua. Have you really done some research on cold chi?" Nodding, Zhuowen waved his left hand and the holy ice rune on the back of his left hand lit up. It was the extreme frost that he had not used in a long time. The extreme frost was an earth-rank cold chi. However, due to Zhuowen's fire fusion art, he could continuously fuse different types of earth fire, increasing the power of the earth fire to an extremely terrifying degree. The extreme frost was far from being able to compare to the flames created by the fusion of different types of earth fire. Therefore, the power of ice and fire was not equal at all. That was why Zhuowen had never used the holy ice fire rune. After all, if the power of ice and fire was not equal, it was very easy for an explosion to occur during the fusion process. At that time, he would be the unlucky one. Looking at Zhuowen, who was enveloped by countless blue cold chi, Ruan Lingyu's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of shock. Although the extreme frost that Zhuowen used could not compare to the cold chi in her body, it was still much more terrifying than the average cold chi. "Miss Lingyu should believe me now, right?" Zhuowen said with a smile. "Since young Master Zhua has done some research on cold chi, then Lingyu will respectfully accept." Nodding, Ruan Lingyu stretched out her right hand. A pair of snow-white lotus arms were placed in front of Zhuowen. The blush on her charming face became more and more intense, and her beautiful eyes were filled with shyness. Before this, she had never come into contact with any man, so it was inevitable that she would feel embarrassed in her heart. Zhuowen did not think too much about it. After hearing Ruan Lingyu's description, Zhuowen knew that Ruan Lingyu's body was hiding some kind of extraordinary secret, which was why he asked her to investigate. Holding Ruan Lingyu's jade-like hand, Zhuowen only felt a cold and slippery touch. Then, the power of the holy ice rune in his left hand swept through Ruan Lingyu's right hand and into her body. When the power of the holy ice rune flowed through Ruan Lingyu's meridians and finally reached her lower dantian, an extremely terrifying cold energy blocked the power of the holy ice rune. This is Chapter 886. Unruly Leng Ying. At this moment, Zhuowen's gaze was extremely solemn. Earlier, he had used the Ice Saint symbol's power to investigate Ruan Lingyu's entire body, passing through her meridians all the way to her dantian. After which, he discovered a shocking scene. This was because Ruan Lingyu's entire dantian did not contain yuan power but an endless amount of cold qi. Moreover, this cold qi was extremely terrifying, causing Ruan Lingyu's dantian to be frozen by this terrifying cold qi. The connection between the dantian and the meridians at both ends was also sealed by ice, preventing the yuan power in the meridians from entering the dantian. This was the ultimate reason why Ruan Lingyu was unable to cultivate. Miss Lingyu. Your dantian. Zhuowen opened his mouth but did not know what to say. A bitter smile appeared at the corners of Ruan Lingyu's mouth as she said, "As you can see, my dantian is filled with an endless amount of strange cold qi. This cold qi is extremely powerful and has sealed the meridians around my dantian, causing me to be unable to cultivate. This cold qi was accumulated in my dantian after a serious illness when I was 10 years old. My father had invited many strong practitioners in Yen City to take a look at it, but they were all helpless." Hearing this, Zhuowen revealed a contemplative look. Zhuowen had never heard of cold qi accumulating in the dantian. Generally speaking, the dantian was the most important part of a cultivator's body. At the same time, it was also an extremely fragile part. The cold qi in Ruan Lingyu's dantian was extremely terrifying, far more powerful than the extreme cold in Zhuowen's body. However, it still could not compare to heaven stage cold qi. It should be a type of cold qi that was between earth stage and heaven stage. The destructive power of this cold qi should be extremely terrifying. Not to mention the fragile dantian in a person's body, even if the outside of a person's body was corroded by this cold qi, there was a possibility of death. However, Ruan Lingyu currently seemed to be completely fine. The terrifying cold qi in her dantian seemed to be under someone's control. Although it was attached to Ruan Lingyu's dantian, it did not harm her in the slightest. Miss Lingyu. Was the cold qi in your dantian so powerful from the beginning? Zhuowen felt that the cold air in Ruan Lingyu's dantian seemed to have a life of its own and was growing. However, Ruan Lingyu shook her head, and said, "When I was 10 years old, this cold qi was not very strong, and could only barely seal my dantian and meridians. Now that 7 years have passed, this cold qi has become stronger with the passage of time, and my body is also getting worse year by year." Zhuowen furrowed his brows. This cold qi was very strange. From what Ruan Lingyu said, Zhuowen felt that this cold qi seemed to be using Ruan Lingyu's body to strengthen itself. This feeling was very strange. If Xiao He were here, perhaps it would be able to tell the origin of this cold qi. No matter how hard he thought about it, Zhuowen still could not figure out the origin of the cold qi in Ruan Lingyu's body. He could not help but miss the days when Xiao He was still around. After all, Xiao He had lived much longer than Zhuowen. She must know a lot of things. "You piece of trash, how dare you molest Lingyu? You're courting death." Just as Zhuowen was deep in thought, a shout came from the private room next door. Then, Leng Ying was already standing at the door. She happened to see Zhuowen holding Ruan Lingyu's right hand. Her beautiful eyes narrowed, and without any explanation, she struck out with her right palm. Zhuowen did not expect Leng Ying to suddenly appear and attack without any explanation. For a moment, he was caught off guard. Leng Ying took advantage of the opening and struck his chest. Dang dang dang. With a muffled groan, Zhuowen retreated 3 steps, almost out of the range of the carriage. The blood in his body was boiling, and the injuries in his body were almost triggered by this attack. Zhuowen was so shocked that he hurriedly circulated the origin energy in his body to forcefully suppress the injuries in his body. Leng Ying arrived in front of Ruan Lingyu and stared at Zhuowen with her beautiful eyes. There was a trace of surprise in her eyes because when she attacked Zhuowen's chest earlier, she discovered that this person's body was as hard as steel. Moreover, he only took 3 steps back after receiving her attack. One had to know that she, Leng Ying, was a three-wheel Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivator, while the young man in front of her was only a one-wheel Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivator. There was a gap of 2 whole realms between them. Leng Ying's full-strength attack had only forced Zhuowen back 3 steps. Obviously, this result made Leng Ying somewhat dissatisfied. I originally thought that you were just a shameless person who did not know how to be grateful. Now, it seems that you're a scum who forgets his morals for a woman. You actually dared to molest Lingyu because she has no cultivation. Leng Ying's beautiful eyes were cold. Just as she was about to drive Zhuowen out again, Wan Lingyu stood in front of Leng Ying. Sister Leng Ying, you misunderstood. Zhuowen was just checking the condition of the cold qi in my body, Wan Lingyu explained anxiously. Lingyu. Don't be fooled by this guy. The Patriarch has invited so many experts to check the cold qi in your body, but they couldn't find anything wrong with it. How could a one-wheel Ultimate Emperor Realm piece of trash like him be able to see through it? I think he's just trying to take advantage of you. Leng Ying shook her head. Her beautiful eyes stared at Zhuowen behind Wan Lingyu with extreme hostility. Her eyes were filled with threat and warning. At this moment, Zhuowen had completely suppressed his injuries. He stared coldly at Leng Ying. Leng Ying's repeated attacks had already caused Zhuowen to feel extreme disgust for her. If it weren't for his injuries, he definitely wouldn't have shown her any mercy. Lingyu, get out of the way. We can't let this lecher stay here. Leng Ying waved her right hand in an attempt to push Wan Lingyu aside. However, the latter stubbornly stood in front of Leng Ying and said, I won't allow you to touch young Master Zhua unless you deal with me as well. You. Leng Ying glared at the stubborn Wan Lingyu and had no choice but to give up. She coldly glanced at Zhuowen and said, Brat, you better know your place. Don't think that a piece of trash like you can get close to the daughter of the Wan clan. Let me tell you, that's impossible. After coldly saying this, Leng Ying returned to the private room next door, leaving only Zhuowen and Wan Lingyu standing there. Young Master Zhua. I'm sorry, I don't think Big Sister Leng Ying did it on purpose. She's just taking care of me. Please don't take it to heart, Wan Lingyu apologized to Zhuowen. Zhuowen waved his hand and didn't say anything. Leng Ying was always targeting him. Even though Zhuowen had a good temper, he was still a little angry. However, he couldn't show it in front of Wan Lingyu. Miss Lingyu. The cold qi in your body is very strange. I've discovered that it seems to have a life of its own. It's actually growing stronger and stronger. Suddenly, Zhuowen spoke to Wan Lingyu with a serious expression. You can tell. Wan Lingyu was startled, and then a wisp of bitterness appeared on her pretty face. As the person involved, she naturally had an extremely good understanding of the cold qi within her dantian. During these 7 years, she was practically familiar with the rules of operation of this strange cold qi, and she had a deep understanding of the characteristics of cold qi. Young Master Zhua. Do you have a way to deal with it? Wan Lingyu looked at Zhuowen with some hope. Zhuowen smiled bitterly and said helplessly, I'm sorry. Miss Lingyu, although I can sense that the cold qi in your body is extraordinary, I'm unable to deal with it at the moment. Unable to deal with it at the moment? Can you deal with it in the future? Wan Lingyu's beautiful eyes flickered as she asked in surprise. Zhuowen nodded and said, as you can see, I'm heavily injured and my strength has been greatly reduced. If I were at my peak, I could try to help you expel the cold qi in your body. Zhuowen wasn't speaking carelessly. Back then, he had used the Rainbow Phoenix to suppress the heaven-rank cold qi in Mu Qinshue's body. Although the cold qi in Wan Lingyu's body was powerful, it paled in comparison to the cold qi in Mu Qinshue's body. If Zhuowen recovered his strength, he would be able to fuse a powerful flame and try to neutralize the cold qi in Wan Lingyu's body. Wan Lingyu didn't doubt Zhuowen's words. She could sense the sincerity in the young man's eyes. She knew that Zhuowen wouldn't lie to her about this. Moreover, she could sense that Zhuowen's injuries were quite severe. The young man before her wasn't as simple as a first-will ultimate emperor realm cultivator. When Wan Lingyu first saw the unconscious Zhuowen, she could sense that the young man before her was no ordinary person. Although Wan Lingyu didn't have any cultivation, her intuition had always been accurate. Young Master Zhua. I'm looking forward to your strength recovering and helping me expel the cold qi in my body, Wan Lingyu said with a smile. Seeing Wan Lingyu's sweet smile, Zhuowen asked in surprise, Miss Lingyu. Do you really believe my words so much? Wan Lingyu blushed slightly and said softly, my intuition tells me that you don't seem like someone who would lie. Hearing this, Zhuowen's face became gloomy. He rubbed his nose. Could it be that she trusted him so much just based on her intuition? This made Zhuowen feel rather awkward. After all, whether or not he could expel the cold qi in Wan Lingyu's body was still unknown. However, Wan Lingyu's trust in him greatly improved Zhuowen's impression of her. If Zhuowen could truly recover his strength, Zhuowen wouldn't mind helping Wan Lingyu expel the cold qi. The two of them chatted for a while. Wan Lingyu felt a little tired and entered another private room to rest. As for Zhuowen, he silently sat cross-legged in the outermost private room of the living room. His eyes flickered. Right now, Zhuowen's condition wasn't very good. His sea of consciousness had been destroyed by the Azure Emperor to the point that it was practically in ruins. He couldn't use his mental energy at all. It would be extremely difficult for him to recover his sea of consciousness. Because of his heavy injuries, the Yuan power in his body had dropped to the level of a first-will ultimate emperor realm cultivator. Furthermore, his injuries were very serious and could erupt at any time. This made it difficult for Zhuowen to even unleash the strength of a first-will ultimate emperor realm cultivator. The most important thing now is to stabilize the injuries in my body. Only then will I be able to unleash my full strength. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He knew that the most troublesome thing for him right now was the injuries in his body. Fortunately, he had the heart of the Nether King. Given a few days, he should be able to completely stabilize his injuries. Chapter 887. Shaoyan clan time flew by like a white steed. 3 days passed by very quickly. Zhuowen spent most of his time recuperating in his private room. During these 3 days, Zhuowen fully utilized the vitality of the Hades King's heart and used its terrifying recovery ability to temporarily suppress the injuries in his body. However, Zhuowen knew that this was only temporarily suppressing his injuries. If he wanted to completely heal his injuries, he would probably need the help of external elixirs. Moreover, a heavenly venerate's nascent soul was even more effective than elixirs. However, the spirit ring was currently in Leng Ying's possession. Zhuowen's eyes flickered coldly when he thought of Leng Ying. Zhuowen loathed such an unreasonable woman from the bottom of his heart. Although Zhuowen's cultivation was still at the ultimate emperor realm, Zhuowen was still able to unleash considerable battle prowess due to his injuries being suppressed. After all, Zhuowen's cultivation was at the initial stage of the sovereign realm. Coupled with the fact that Zhuowen had comprehended the Azura blood spear, he wasn't afraid of an ultimate emperor realm expert like Leng Ying even though he was only at the ultimate emperor realm. Moreover, even if Zhuowen couldn't use his mental energy and Yuan energy, he still had his physical body. Zhuowen's great Nirvana son had already reached the 4th level of the Law of Fate. With his current cultivation at the Ultimate Emperor realm, it was more than enough for him to challenge a Ultimate Emperor realm expert. He could even put up a fight against a Ultimate Emperor realm expert. If Zhuowen's injuries were completely healed, Zhuowen's cultivation would gradually recover as well. However, without the assistance of external items, this process would definitely be extremely slow. I need to take back the spirit ring as soon as possible. Zhuowen was even more anxious to take back the spirit ring when he thought of this. Halt! Suddenly, the moving carriage came to a stop. Leng Ying and Wan Lingyu, who were in the 2 private rooms next door, walked out. Leng Ying merely shot an indifferent glance at Zhuowen before taking the lead to alight from the car. Wan Lingyu walked to Zhuowen's side, her beautiful eyes filled with confusion as she asked, I don't know what happened. The carriage actually stopped again. Let's go out and take a look. Zhuowen chuckled and led Wan Lingyu out of the carriage. At the front of the group, there was a group of young warriors in green and white robes. They seemed to be discussing something with Commander Wan. Among them, Commander Wan had an ugly expression. The robes worn by this group of young warriors were exactly the same. They should belong to the same faction. However, what made Zhuowen unhappy was that these young warriors in green and white robes all had their chins raised and their eyes filled with arrogance. They're disciples of the Clear Void Valley. Wan Lingyu suddenly exclaimed. Hearing this, Zhuowen's gaze hardened. He naturally knew of the Clear Void Valley. It was one of the 5 superpowers of Yen City, a colossal existence in Yen City. What he did not expect was that he would actually encounter disciples of the Clear Void Valley on the road. No wonder these young warriors all had arrogant gazes. They were probably relying on the fact that they were disciples of the Clear Void Valley to act so high and mighty. Although these Clear Void Valley disciples had arrogant expressions, their strength was indeed not weak. Among them, the weakest was at the second wheel of the Ultimate Emperor realm. The strongest had even reached the 5th wheel of the Ultimate Emperor realm. Commander Wan said a few more words to the leader of the Clear Void Valley disciples. Then, with an ugly expression, he arrived before Wan Lingyu and Leng Ying. Commander Wan. What happened? Leng Ying frowned slightly and asked. Commander Ruan's gaze flickered. He sighed and said, I don't know the specifics. However, these people from the Clear Void Valley have actually reserved the area in a radius of 100 miles in front of them. No one is allowed to enter. What happened up ahead? What? They reserved the area in a radius of 100 miles in front of them? The Clear Void Valley is so daring. What are they doing up ahead? Leng Ying was startled. Her beautiful eyes flickered. What was this girl thinking right now? Zhuowen was also somewhat moved. They actually reserved the area in a radius of 100 miles. This Clear Void Valley's power was indeed extraordinary. After all, the area in a radius of 100 miles was very large. To reserve it would require a huge amount of manpower and resources. However, what Zhuowen was more curious about was what the people from the Clear Void Valley were doing up ahead. Then what should we do? Up ahead is the only road that leads to Yen City. Now that it's been reserved by the Clear Void Valley, what should we do? Leng Ying said somewhat unhappily. Commander Wan shook his head and said helplessly, we can only wait. Wait until the Clear Void Valley finishes their business up ahead. Only then can we continue on our way. Looks like that's the only way. Wan Lingyu sighed and interjected. They were very clear about how great the power of the Clear Void Valley was. This was a powerful existence that they could not afford to offend. On the left side of the road ahead, there was a rather large open space. At this moment, there were already quite a few martial artists in different clothes gathered on the open space. These martial artists were divided into 3 groups. Obviously, they were also passers-by who were blocked outside by the Clear Void Valley. The number of martial artists in these 3 groups was about the same, around 15 to 20 people. They should belong to 3 different powers. Let's wait there for a while. Leng Ying looked at the open space on the left side and said to Commander Wan. Commander Wan nodded. He led the group and slowly walked towards the empty land. The arrival of Commander Ruan's group had obviously attracted the attention of the other 3 groups on the open space. However, they only casually sized up Commander Ruan's group. Most of their gazes were on Leng Ying and Wan Lingyu. Leng Ying's expression was cold. Her body was curvaceous and her skin was snow-white. Her appearance could be considered to be above average. As for Wan Lingyu, she was delicate and pitiful. Her face was unnaturally pale, giving people a feeling of pity. Her appearance was even above Lin Ying's. The sudden appearance of two beauties naturally attracted the attention of many men. However, these people were not too rude. They only looked at the two women for a while before withdrawing their gazes. When the group of people arrived at the open space, Commander Yuan ordered the other guards to unequip their horses and set up tents on the spot, preparing to spend the night here. After all, no one knew how long the clear void valley would occupy the area ahead. Thus, Commander Yuan naturally had to prepare for a rainy day. The guards and the others moved extremely quickly. They quickly set up the tents. However, what made Zhuowen feel awkward was that the tents were just enough for Commander Yuan's group to live in. He, Zhuowen, was the extra one. Because of this, many people looked at him with a trace of mockery and ridicule. "Young Master Zhua, why don't you rest in my tent first? My tent is more spacious." Just as Zhuowen stood in place, a clear voice rang out. He saw Yuan Lingyu sitting in her tent. Her face was crimson red as she waved at Zhuowen. Yuan Lingyu's actions undoubtedly attracted the gazes of the other people in the group. These gazes were filled with doubt and confusion. Yuan Lingyu was their Yuan family's daughter. At this moment, she was actually waving at a stranger like Zhuowen to enter her tent. Wasn't this inviting a wolf into the house? "Lingyu, don't bother with this lecture. If you let him enter your tent, who knows what he will do?" Lin Ying suddenly said coldly. Yuan Lingyu frowned slightly. Just as she was about to say something, Zhuowen said to Yuan Lingyu with a faint smile, "Miss Lingyu, I appreciate your kindness. Cultivators don't care about trifles. I can spend the night outside." As he spoke, Zhuowen slowly walked to the foot of a tree and gently leaned against it. He narrowed his eyes. As for Lin Ying, he didn't even look at her. Now, Zhuowen's main goal was to snatch the spiritual ring from Lin Ying. Once he got the spiritual ring back, Zhuowen could easily leave the Yuan family's group. At that time, he could rely on the resources in the spiritual ring to recover his cultivation. Looking at Zhuowen's indifferent attitude, Lin Ying's face turned slightly ugly. However, she didn't do anything. Instead, she whispered something to herself. Yuan Lingyu's beautiful eyes flashed slightly. She sighed softly and didn't say anything. She could feel the pride in Zhuowen's heart. He didn't care about food that was given to him. However, the sky wasn't dark yet. Therefore, the group didn't enter their tents to recover their cultivation. Instead, they gathered together and talked about everything under the sun. Dang dang dang. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps could be heard. From the group closest to the Yuan family's group, a graceful young man in a yellow robe walked over. Behind him were two subordinates with strong auras. Commander Yuan and Lin Ying were alert. They turned their heads and stared at the young man. Commander Yuan stood up and cupped his hands at the young man in the yellow robe. He said, "Is there anything I can help you with?" The young man in the yellow robe smiled. He ignored Commander Yuan and stared at Lin Ying and Yuan Lingyu. He smiled and said, "The two ladies should be the Yuan family's leader, Yuan Lingyu, and the Yuan family's #1 genius, Miss Lin Ying." "You are?" Lin Ying frowned and asked. "He. I am Xiaoyan Pu from the Xiaoyan family." The young man in the yellow robe said with a faint smile. "What? You are from the Xiaoyan family? Who is Xiaoyan Qinglin to you?" Lin Ying's beautiful eyes were shocked. She quickly asked the young man. The other members of the Yuan family's group were also shocked. They stared at Xiaoyan Pu in horror. Zhuowen, who was leaning on a tree trunk far away, also noticed the strange expressions of the Yuan family. He also looked at Xiaoyan Pu. It seemed that the Xiaoyan family wasn't simple. Otherwise, the Yuan family wouldn't be so shocked after Xiaoyan Pu introduced himself. "Xiaoyan Qinglin is my elder brother." Xiaoyan Pu smiled politely. "I see. I didn't expect Xiaoyan Qinglin to be your elder brother. We were rude before. Please don't take offense. Leng Ying's beautiful eyes flickered. She revealed a rare smile and cupped her hands as she replied. At the same time, there was an uproar in the Ruan family's group. Listening to the discussion around him, Zhuowen also had some understanding of the Xiaoyan family. Chapter 888. Phoenix Feather. Everyone knew that there were 5 major powers in Yen City that were above all other powers. They were the Imperial Family, Clear Void Valley, Thousand Star Palace, Heaven Peak Demon Palace and 5 Elements Sect. Under these 5 major powers, there were countless clans and powers. There were strong and weak clans among these clans. Among the countless clans, there were 4 clans that were recognized as the strongest clans below the 5 powers. These 4 clans were known as aristocratic families. There were only 4 clans that could be called aristocratic families in Yen City, and the Xiaoyan aristocratic family was one of them. This aristocratic family was one of the strongest clans in Yen City and had a far-reaching influence. On the other hand, Xiaoyan Qinglin was an extraordinary person. Based on what others had said, this person was a genius on the Flame God list of Yen City. Although he was only ranked in the middle of the Flame God list, every genius who was ranked on the list was an influential figure in Yen City. For Xiaoyan Qinglin to be ranked in the middle of the list, he was already considered an extremely powerful genius. At this moment, Leng Ying was like a completely different person. She no longer had the cold expression on her face. Instead, she seemed to be overly enthusiastic. The Xiaoyan aristocratic family was not a place that anyone could climb up to. After all, the Xiaoyan aristocratic family was one of the 4 strongest clans. They were extremely powerful and much more powerful than the Ruan family. To be able to meet Xiaoyan Pu on the road was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Leng Ying and the Ruan family. After all, the chances of meeting someone from the Xiaoyan aristocratic family in Yen City were too slim. Moreover, Xiaoyan Pu was Xiaoyan Qinglin's younger brother. In other words, he was the second son of the Xiaoyan aristocratic family. If Leng Ying could form a good relationship with Xiaoyan Pu, it would not only benefit her but also the Ruan family. I did not expect to meet young Master Xiaoyan here. It is our fortune. Leng Ying cupped her hands and said enthusiastically. The corners of Xiaoyan Pu's mouth curled up. He glanced at Leng Ying a few times before his gaze landed on the soft Ruan Lingyu. There was a trace of passion in his eyes. Leng Ying also noticed Xiaoyan Pu's gaze. Her jade-like hands stiffened in front of her and there was a trace of embarrassment on her face. However, this trace of embarrassment was quickly covered up by her. Xiaoyan Pu gently nodded at Leng Ying and walked straight towards Ruan Lingyu. He did not care about Leng Ying, whose face became ugly. Miss Ruan. This one has heard that your body is frail and sickly. Moreover, the cold qi in your body has accumulated. This one just so happens to have a phoenix feather on my body. This item can drive away the cold qi in a martial artist's body. Please accept it, Miss Ruan. Xiaoyan Pu smiled and waved his right hand. Suddenly, a fiery red feather appeared in his palm and he handed it to Ruan Lingyu. As soon as the phoenix feather appeared, the surrounding temperature immediately rose. It was as if a heat wave had appeared out of thin air and spread out. The eyes of the other members of the Ruan clan lit up. This phoenix feather was a good item. It was said that it was a feather left behind by a divine beast, the phoenix. The blazing energy it emitted was extremely beneficial to warriors. Although it could not increase a cultivator's cultivation, it could nourish the human body. For some people with low cultivation or no cultivation at all, it had immeasurable benefits. Of course, phoenix feathers were also an extremely precious material that arcana masters greatly desired. Phoenix feathers could be used to set up extremely powerful origin formations. Many people in the Ruan clan's team did not expect Xiaoyan Pu to be so rich and overbearing, to give such a precious gift as the phoenix feather. What made them even more confused was that Xianpu valued Ruan Lingyu so much. Although Ruan Lingyu's appearance was excellent, it was not to the point of being devastatingly beautiful. With Xiaoyanpu's taste, he should not be captivated by Ruan Lingyu. Although many people did not understand, since Xiaoyanpu was so attentive to Ruan Lingyu, it was not a bad thing for the Ruan clan. In fact, it was a good thing. The Xiaoyan clan was much more powerful than the Ruan clan. If the Ruan clan could climb up the Xiaoyan clan's branch, it would be extremely beneficial for the Ruan clan. At this moment, Leng Ying, who had been ignored by Xiaoyanpu, had a slightly gloomy expression. There was a trace of jealousy in her beautiful eyes. In terms of appearance, Ruan Lingyu was not much better than her. In terms of cultivation, she was the #1 genius of the Ruan clan, while Ruan Lingyu was an ordinary person with no cultivation. Leng Ying was a little depressed. Why was Xiaoyanpu so cold to her and so attentive to Ruan Lingyu? Looking at the attentive Xiaoyanpu in front of her, Ruan Lingyu was a little stunned. She did not know what to do. She naturally knew Xiaoyanpu's identity. He was the second young master of the Xiaoyan clan and the younger brother of the genius Xiaoyan Qinglin. His status was much higher than hers. Even so, Xiaoyanpu was so attentive to her. If it were anyone else, they would not be any better than Ruan Lingyu. Young Master Xiaoyan. This phoenix feather is too precious. I can't accept it, Ruan Lingyu replied timidly. Xiaoyanpu smiled indifferently and said gently, Miss Ruan. This is a small token of my appreciation. If you don't accept it, do you want me to kneel down and beg you? Lingyu. This is young Master Xiaoyan's appreciation. Just accept it. Leng Ying immediately came to Ruan Lingyu's side and said with a light smile. Hearing Leng Ying's words, Ruan Lingyu nodded lightly and took the phoenix feather from Xiaoyanpu's hands. The warmth of the phoenix feather entered Ruan Lingyu's body, causing her face to turn red like a ripe red apple. When the other members of the Ruan clan saw Ruan Lingyu's rosy face, they all smiled happily. Because of the cold energy in her body, Ruan Lingyu had always been weak and sickly. Now that they saw the phoenix feather was effective on Ruan Lingyu, they all felt happy for her. Lingyu thanks young Master Xiaoyan for giving me this feather. With a red face, Ruan Lingyu bowed gratefully to Xiaoyanpu. Miss Ruan, you're welcome. Xiaoyanpu said gracefully. Young Master Xiaoyan. What is Qingshu Valley doing in front of us? Why did they surround the area of 100 miles in front of us? Leng Ying stood beside Ruan Lingyu and asked Xiaoyanpu. Xiaoyanpu shook his head and said, I'm not very clear about this matter. It seems that the people of Qingshu Valley in front of us discovered some kind of treasure. The person who discovered it secretly notified Qingshu Valley. Afterwards, Qingshu Valley sent many disciples here. It's said that Qingshu Valley's #1 expert, Zui Qingfeng, also came here. His goal is the treasure that appeared. What? Zui Qingfeng also came? It seems that the treasure in front of us is incredible. Leng Ying's beautiful eyes slightly narrowed and she could not help but exclaim. Zui Qingfeng was not only the #1 expert of Qingshu Valley, he was also one of the top 5 evildoers on the Flame God list. Moreover, this person was personally selected by the Flame Emperor to participate in the entrance exam of Jiashan Academy. He was a famous peerless evildoer in Yan City. This Zui Qingfeng was much more famous than Xiaoyan Qinglin of the Xiaoyan family. His strength was also much stronger than the latter. It was said that his cultivation had already broken through the Xuanzuan realm. Of course, the other 4 geniuses who were on the same level as Zui Qingfeng were not weaker than the latter. They were Mo Ying of the Heavenly Peak Devil Palace, Xian Xing of the 10,000 Star Palace, K2 of the 5 Elements sect and Prince Mo Lingtian of the Imperial family. These 5 were the most dazzling geniuses of Yan City, especially Prince Mo Lingtian. His strength was even more terrifying than the other 4. It was said that he was a peerless evildoer personally cultivated by the Flame Emperor. Prince Xiaoyan. Could it be that even with your Shaoyan family's reputation, Qingshu Valley is not willing to let us pass? Leng Ying asked again. She knew that the relationship between the 4 great families and the 5 great powers of Yan City was not ordinary. With the Shaoyan family's reputation, just letting Qingshu Valley pass should not be a big problem. However, Xiaoyan Pu shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "Even so, those Qingshu Valley disciples guarding the entrance are not willing to let us pass no matter what. I'm afraid that the thing inside is extraordinary. Otherwise, Qingshu Valley would not be so cautious. I really don't know what kind of treasure is hidden in the forest ahead. It actually caused Qingshu Valley to mobilize so many people." Leng Ying nodded her head. Her beautiful eyes were filled with doubt. The other people's expressions were no different from Leng Ying's. They were all extremely curious about the treasure that appeared in the forest ahead. Unfortunately, they did not dare to enter the forest. After all, there were disciples of Qingshu Valley inside. If they entered, it was likely that they would not be able to return. Zhuowen, who was silently leaning against a tree trunk, was also extremely curious about what kind of treasure was hidden in the forest guarded by Qingshu Valley disciples. However, compared to this, Zhuowen felt a trace of vigilance towards Xiaoyan Pu's sudden enthusiasm towards Ruan Lingyu. The Xiaoyan family was much stronger than the Ruan family, and Ruan Lingyu was not a peerless beauty. Moreover, this was clearly the first time Xiaoyan Pu had met Ruan Lingyu and the others. However, it was precisely because of this that Xiaoyan Pu had prepared a phoenix feather for Ruan Lingyu the first time they met. This made Zhuowen feel that something was wrong. As for what was wrong, he couldn't tell. There should not be anything on Ruan Lingyu that Xiaoyan Pu wanted, unless Zhuowen suddenly thought of the strange cold energy in Ruan Lingyu's dantian. In addition, Xiaoyan Pu had said that there was cold energy in Ruan Lingyu's body. It seemed that he understood Ruan Lingyu's physical condition very well. From these various suspicious points, Zhuowen keenly felt that there was something strange about this Xiaoyan Pu. Xiaoyan Pu chatted with Ruan Lingyu and Leng Ying for a while. His gaze suddenly noticed the pitch-black spirit ring on Leng Ying's finger. His gaze revealed a trace of astonishment. Xiaoyan Pu was very clear about the preciousness of this spirit ring. It was a storage treasure that only heavenly venerables could refine. In the younger generation of the Xiaoyan family, only his brother, Xiaoyan Qinglin, was qualified to have his own spirit ring. Even Xiaoyan Pu was not qualified to have it. This was also why his gaze revealed a trace of astonishment when he saw the spirit ring on Leng Ying's finger. Leng Ying also noticed Xiaoyan Pu's gaze. Especially when she saw Xiaoyan Pu staring at the spirit ring on her finger with astonishment, a trace of vanity appeared on Leng Ying's face. She slightly raised her chin. Chapter 889. Late at night, I didn't expect Miss Leng Ying to have a spiritual ring. It seems like the Ruan family is really secretive. Xiaoyan Pu said meaningfully. Leng Ying shook her head, but the vanity in her eyes became more intense. She could see the envy in Xiaoyan Pu's eyes. After all, even Xiaoyan Pu didn't have a spiritual ring, but she did. She felt that the gap between her and Xiaoyan Pu wasn't that big. Young Master Xiaoyan, you've misunderstood. This spiritual ring wasn't given to me by the Ruan family. I got it by chance. Leng Ying said with a smile, full of confidence. Xiaoyan Pu was stunned, then he smiled and said, "It seems like Miss Leng Ying is quite lucky to get a spiritual ring by chance. I'm so envious." Ruan Lingyu wanted to say that the spirit ring belonged to Zhuowen, but she was stopped by Leng Ying. She swallowed the words she wanted to say. Xiaoyan Pu chatted with Leng Ying for a while, then he returned to his team with his 2 subordinates. However, Zhuowen, who was leaning against a tree, looked even colder. This Leng Ying was really big-breasted but brainless. That Xiaoyan Pu didn't have a spiritual ring, but she still showed off her spiritual ring in front of him, showing off her superiority. Unfortunately, such an outcome would bring irreparable consequences to Leng Ying. Leng Ying raised her chin and turned around. She immediately noticed Zhuowen's cold gaze. She said coldly to Zhuowen, "You lecher, trash, what are you looking at? Move your dog eyes away." Zhuowen sneered and said indifferently, "There's really nothing on you that's worth looking at. If it wasn't for someone stealing a spiritual ring, I wouldn't even pay attention to that thief." "What did you say?" "Trash, do you dare to say it again?" Leng Ying's beautiful eyes were cold. She took a step forward and flew towards Zhuowen. She wanted to teach Zhuowen a lesson. Looking at Leng Ying, who was rushing towards him, Zhuowen's eyes were extremely cold. He took a step forward and flew upwards like a bird, dodging Leng Ying's attack. Rumble. Leng Ying's palm wind whizzed past and viciously slammed into the tree trunk in front of her, leaving behind an extremely deep palm print. Whoosh! Taking a step in the air, Zhuowen was like a great rock spreading its wings, instantly landing behind Leng Ying. Shortly after, Zhuowen's foot stomped on the ground, his entire body was like a gust of wind as he blasted out a palm strike towards Leng Ying's back. Whether it was in terms of cultivation or battle experience, Leng Ying was far inferior to Zhuowen. Although Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the Ultimate Emperor realm, which was 2 realms lower than Leng Ying's, Zhuowen was still capable of teaching her a lesson. Leng Ying's pretty face changed slightly when she felt the palm wind whistling towards her back. Zhuowen's battle awareness had somewhat exceeded her expectations. At this moment, she was just about to unleash a palm strike and was about to run out of energy. However, this brat had actually launched an attack at this moment. She had no time to turn around and defend herself. However, just as Zhuowen's palm wind whistled towards her, a burly figure blocked in front of Leng Ying. He also struck out a palm strike, directly slamming into Zhuowen's right palm. Rumble. When the 2 palms collided, a muffled thunderous sound rang out. Immediately after, a gust of wind swept out in all directions. Zhuowen let out a muffled groan as he took a few steps back. His gaze was grave as he stared at the figure that had suddenly appeared in front of him. This person was none other than Commander Ruan of the Ruan clan. Commander Ruan's strength was slightly stronger than Leng Ying's as he was at the Ultimate Emperor realm. Even though Zhuowen's cultivation was originally very high, he was only at the Ultimate Emperor realm right now. Therefore, he was naturally at a disadvantage when fighting against Commander Ruan. Compared to Zhuowen, who had taken a few steps back, Commander Ruan's figure swayed slightly before he steadied himself. He stared at the retreating Zhuowen in astonishment. The youth in front of him was only at the Ultimate Emperor realm. However, the palm strike he had unleashed was extremely powerful. Even Commander Ruan couldn't help but sway. This strength had clearly surpassed the limits of a Ultimate Emperor realm cultivator. At this moment, Leng Ying had also regained her senses. She walked to Commander Ruan's side and pointed at Zhuowen as she scolded, "What a coward! You don't dare to fight me head-on and instead launch a sneak attack from behind. Are you still a man?" As soon as she said this, the other guards in the Ruan clan looked at Zhuowen with disdain. Their cultivations weren't high, so they naturally couldn't see through Zhuowen's strength. They only thought that Zhuowen was really as Leng Ying had said. He didn't dare to fight them head-on and had instead launched a sneak attack from behind. It's clearly your cultivation that's lacking. As an Ultimate Emperor realm cultivator, you can't even catch a mere Ultimate Emperor realm piece of trash like me. Instead, I took advantage of your weakness. Doesn't that mean you're worse than trash? Now you're trying to slander me. Don't you feel ashamed? Zhuowen said coldly. A piece of trash like you really has a big mouth. You look like you're not convinced. Then let's have a try. Let's see what qualifications you have to be so arrogant. Leng Ying's pretty face was ugly as she spoke coldly. Enough. We're all on the same side. Why should we fight to the death? Sister Leng Ying and young Master Zhua, both of you should take a step back. Don't fight to the death. Ruan Lingyu stepped forward. Leng Ying snorted coldly. She raised her chin and said indifferently, since Lingyu has stepped forward, I'll let you off for now. However, if there's a next time, I won't let you off so easily. As she spoke, Leng Ying was like a proud peacock as she slowly walked back into her tent. She didn't even look at Zhuowen. Commander Ruan looked at Zhuowen meaningfully. A pensive look appeared in his eyes. However, he didn't care too much about it. After all, Zhuowen was only an ultimate emperor realm cultivator. He didn't think much of him. Everyone, take a rest here. Commander Ruan shouted and returned to the group of guards. He chatted and laughed with the guards. For a moment, no one paid any attention to Zhuowen, who was standing by the side. Zhuowen didn't feel awkward. Instead, he sat down cross-legged under a tree in a remote corner and began to recuperate. The only thing he wanted to do now was to quickly recover his injuries and cultivation. Once he completely recovered his cultivation, it wouldn't be difficult for him to gain the Flame Emperor's attention in Yen City. Once he gained the Flame Emperor's attention, Zhuowen would be able to enter Jiaxin Academy through the Flame Emperor's means. There are still 4 months until the Jiaxin Academy's examination. Zhuowen muttered to himself as he slowly closed his eyes. Ruan Lingyu originally wanted to go to Zhuowen's side. However, she was stopped by Leng Ying. Helpless, she could only give up. Time gradually passed as the blazing sun in the sky slowly descended. The horizon was gradually covered in a layer of darkness. The few groups on the empty ground gathered together and lit up a bonfire. A group of people gathered around the bonfire, chatting and laughing. Zhuowen continued to silently sit cross-legged in a corner, appearing extremely inconspicuous. Of course, the other members of the Ruan clan seemed to have forgotten about Zhuowen and didn't even spare him a glance. Dang dang dang. The crisp sound of footsteps approached. Zhuowen's ears twitched slightly and he slowly opened his eyes. He saw Ruan Lingyu come in front of him and pass a skewer of crispy barbecued meat to Zhuowen, saying, "Young Master Zhuowen. Seeing that you haven't eaten anything for a day, take this barbecued rabbit meat." A faint smile appeared on Zhuowen's face as he received the barbecued meat without any hesitation. He took a bite and felt that the meat was crispy, fragrant, and extremely delicious. Zhuowen could not help but feel his appetite whet as he finished the barbecued meat in a few bites. "Miss Lingyu, did you barbecue this meat?" Zhuowen asked Ruan Lingyu. Ruan Lingyu nodded and softly said, "I just barbecued it." Looking at young Master Zhuo's expression, it seems that the meat I barbecued is not bad. It's not just not bad, it's simply a delicacy. Zhuowen gave her a thumbs up. Hearing Zhuowen's praise, Ruan Lingyu's cheeks turned slightly red. Perhaps it was because of the phoenix feather, but Ruan Lingyu's complexion was much better than before. Her face was no longer as pale as before and had become much rosier. After chatting with Zhuowen for a while, Ruan Lingyu returned to the bonfire. She knew that Zhuowen didn't have a good relationship with Leng Ying and the others, so she didn't invite Zhuowen to sit by the bonfire. After all, if another conflict occurred, it wouldn't be good for everyone. The night gradually deepened and soon, it was the middle of the night. At this moment, the few groups on the empty ground had all returned to their own tents to sleep. Puchi. A cluster of flames erupted from the bonfire that had yet to be extinguished, emitting a faint sound. Soon after, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. From his senses, he could sense 4 figures slowly approaching this place from the other groups in the open space. Moreover, Zhuowen discovered that the auras of these 4 figures weren't any weaker than Commander Ruan's. It was obvious that all 4 of them were 4-wheeled Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivators. Zhuowen didn't act rashly. Instead, he silently sat in the shadows. His cultivation had dropped too much. Perhaps he could fight 4-wheeled Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivators if he added on the strength of his physical body, but he would still be at a disadvantage. Now that 4-wheeled Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivators had suddenly appeared, Zhuowen would undoubtedly be courting death if he acted rashly and alerted them. Therefore, Zhuowen decided to wait and see. Whoosh! 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 Their target is Leng Ying. Narrowing his eyes, Zhuowen pondered for a moment. Then, a trace of understanding appeared on his face as he silently observed the movements of the four people. Boom! The four of them exchanged glances. Then, the powerful aura of four-wheeled Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivators exploded from their bodies. Leng Ying's tent was instantly torn apart. There was a cry of shock. Then, the four people acted decisively and sealed all the major acupoints on Leng Ying's body. She couldn't move at all. Who is it? How dare you trespass on my Ruan clan's territory? Chapter 890. The man in black, Commander Ruan's shout immediately woke up the other people in the tent. In an instant, the Ruan family's team was in chaos. One by one, the guards sleepily crawled out of their tents, not understanding the situation. Among the four black figures, one of the black figures took a step forward and pounced towards Commander Yuan. With a loud bang, Yuan power surged in all directions and a gale howled. That black figure collided with Commander Yuan. The other three black figures looked at each other. They sealed all of Leng Ying's acupuncture points and carried her on their shoulders. Then, the three of them turned into three streaks of light and rushed towards the dense forest on the other side of the open space. Soon, they disappeared from everyone's sight. Boom! A thunderous sound rang out. Commander Yuan and the black figure, who were fighting fiercely, both retreated dozens of steps. Commander Yuan angrily asked, "Who are you? Why did you kidnap Miss Leng Ying?" The four black figures that appeared just now were all dressed in black. Their faces were covered by a black cloth. It was impossible to see their true faces. The black figure did not answer Commander Ruan's question. Instead, he slowly retreated. With a step, his speed instantly rose to the extreme. He was actually planning to escape. "Where do you think you're going?" Commander Yuan shouted. Yuan power surged out of his right palm. The surging Yuan power condensed into countless Yuan power arrows and shot towards the black figure. Humph! The black-clothed man coldly snorted. With a wave of his right hand, a shield's soul treasure appeared in his hand and blocked in front of him. After blocking the countless Yuan power arrows that were flying towards him, the black-clothed man did not dare to stay any longer. With a stomp of his foot, he completely disappeared from the spot. Whoosh! Commander Yuan came to the place where the black figure was just now. When he saw that the black figure had completely disappeared into the dense forest, a trace of exasperation appeared in his eyes. While everyone's attention was focused on the black-clothed man, Zhuowen, who was originally sitting cross-legged in the shadows, had already quietly left the open space. He was heading towards the depths of the forest where the black-clothed man had left. The commotion caused by the Ruan family's team was not small. Naturally, it attracted the attention of the other teams in the open space. There were even a few angry complaints. Clearly, they were extremely unhappy that they had been woken up in the middle of the night. Thud thud thud. Among the Shaoyan family's troops, Shaoyan Pu led a group of people to the Ruan family's tent. Shaoyan Pu, who was dressed in a yellow robe, asked Ruan Lingyu, who was panicking, "Miss Ruan, what's going on?" Ruan Lingyu had not been out for long, so she did not know much about what had happened. She only knew that Leng Ying had been kidnapped. Commander Yuan came to Ruan Lingyu's side and said politely to Shaoyan Pu, "Young Master Shaoyan, it's like this." Very quickly, Commander Yuan recounted everything that had happened. Shaoyan Pu furrowed his brows and coldly said, "How preposterous! How dare they act so tyrannically in my Shaoyan clan's group? They must have eaten a leopard's guts. Young Master Shaoyan, what should we do now? Sister Leng Ying is the #1 prodigy of the Ruan family after all. If anything happens to her, we won't be able to explain it to our family." Ruan Lingyu was so anxious that she was about to cry. These people are very strange, and they are so familiar with your Ruan clan's camp. I'm afraid there are spies in your team. Xiao Yanpu analyzed. Spies? Impossible. Our group is made up of subordinates trained by the Ruan clan. They are all loyal to the Ruan clan. It's impossible for anyone to betray us. Ruan Lingyu shook her head and denied it. Hearing Ruan Lingyu's words, Xiao Yanpu's face showed a trace of doubt. Just as he was about to speak, Commander Ruan, who was standing beside Ruan Lingyu, suddenly spoke. Young miss. Our Ruan clan's people naturally cannot be spies. However, don't forget that Zhuowen, who was taken in halfway, is not a member of the Ruan clan. Moreover, this person's origin is unknown and his relationship with Leng Ying is not good. At this point, Commander Ruan did not continue because there was no need to. After all, his meaning was very clear. Zhuowen was not a member of the Ruan clan. Moreover, his relationship with Leng Ying was extremely bad. During the day, they almost fought. Therefore, if there really was a spy in the Ruan clan, it must be Zhuowen. Young Master Zhuo wouldn't go so far, right? I don't think he's that kind of person. Ruan Lingyu frowned as she defended herself. Young miss. You may know a person's face but not his heart. After all, Zhuowen's origin is unknown. Who knows if he's good or bad? Commander Ruan shook his head. When Xiao Yanpu heard this, he interrupted, since the two of you believe that the spy is Zhuowen, can you let him come out to prove his innocence? If it's a misunderstanding, we won't bother him too much. Commander Ruan nodded. He lifted his foot and walked towards the shadow of the tree trunk where Zhuowen was. However, Commander Ruan's expression was extremely gloomy when he returned. Commander Ruan, what's wrong? Where's young Master Zhua? Seeing that Commander Ruan had returned, Ruan Lingyu quickly asked. That Zhuowen is not there, nor is he in our Ruan clan's tent. I'm afraid that this person is the spy. After he kidnapped Leng Ying, he escaped without a trace. Commander Ruan said with an ugly expression. How is that possible? Ruan Lingyu's face turned pale as she took a few steps back. Her beautiful eyes were still filled with disbelief. In her impression, it was impossible for that resolute-looking young man to do such a thing. However, the clues presented before her eyes made her believe that the person who betrayed their Ruan clan's tent was Zhuowen. Xiao Yanpu, who was standing at the side, looked as if he was deep in thought. After a while, he smiled and said, the 4 black-clothed men should not be far from here. Also, that Zhuowen you mentioned should not be too far away. Why don't we split up and search for him in the dense forest? Hearing this, Ruan Lingyu's beautiful eyes were filled with joy. She said softly, Young Master Xiaoyan, are you willing to help our Ruan clan's team find Sister Leng Ying? Xiao Yanpu nodded and said elegantly, it's my honor to be able to serve Miss Ruan. Of course, I'm willing. Ruan Lingyu's pretty face flushed red as she looked at the elegant and cultured Xiao Yanpu in front of her. A rare trace of shyness appeared in her eyes. Her shy and beautiful appearance made Xiao Yanpu take a few more glances at her. Ha! Since young Master Xiaoyan is willing to help our Ruan clan's team, let's go and search for Miss Leng Ying now. Otherwise, there might be unforeseen circumstances. Commander Ruan said happily. Commander Ruan is right. Let's split up and search. Your Ruan clan's team will search this way. I'll lead my men to search this way. If we find someone, use this signal lamp to inform the other party. Xiao Yanpu nodded and tossed a palm-sized signal lamp to Commander Ruan with his right hand. Receiving the signal lamp, Commander Ruan cupped his hands at Xiao Yanpu and led the Ruan clan's team into the dense forest on the left. Soon, they disappeared into the depths of the dense forest. Looking at the Ruan clan's team leaving, Xiao Yanpu's eyes flickered. A strange smile appeared on his face as he led the team into the dense forest on the right. Whoosh! In the dense forest in the middle of the night, it was so dark that one couldn't even see one's fingers. A black shadow flitted through the darkness, stirring up the leaves. The rustling sound of leaves rustling could be heard from the surrounding dense forest. This black shadow was extremely cautious. While it flashed through the dense forest, it would occasionally stop and observe its surroundings. After confirming that no one was following it, it would once again rush forward. After repeating this several times, it increased its speed and continued to fly forward. Dozens of meters behind this black shadow, a figure with a weak aura was closely following behind this black shadow. This person was quite young. It was Zhuowen, who had secretly followed the black-clothed man from the Ruan clan's tent. At this moment, Zhuowen appeared to be extremely cautious. The aura in his body was restrained to the extreme. Moreover, Zhuowen had the 100 transformation technique, so his control over his aura was much stronger than other warriors. This was also the main reason why Zhuowen had not been discovered by the black-clothed man in front of him even though Zhuowen had been following him for so long. Friend. I know that you have been following me for a long time. Quickly show yourself. Don't force me to pull you out. Suddenly, the black-clothed man in front suddenly stopped. A cold voice slowly resounded through the dense forest. Dozens of meters away, Zhuowen also stopped and hid behind an inconspicuous tree trunk. His heart skipped a beat as he thought to himself, did this person really discover me? However, what made Zhuowen suspicious was that the black-clothed man turned his head and looked in another direction instead of Zhuowen's direction. Not coming out. Alright, alright, alright. Then don't blame me. The black-clothed man said again. His entire body seemed to have let out a sigh of relief. Unexpectedly, he continued on his way and rushed towards the depths of the dense forest. How cunning. It's actually a smokescreen to deceive others. Looking at the black-clothed man in front of him who continued to move forward, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. His heart was rather moved. The fog that this person released just now could easily fool the person who was following him and expose his whereabouts. Fortunately, Zhuowen was cautious by nature and did not take the initiative to show himself because of the black-clothed man's words. Otherwise, the outcome would be worrying. Not long later, the black-clothed man arrived in front of a shrub in the deepest part of the dense forest. He looked around and discovered that no one was paying attention to him. Then, he drilled into the shrub. Looks like the black-clothed men are all behind this shrub. His eyes flickered. Zhuowen hesitated for a moment. Then, he stepped on the ground and directly drilled into the shrub. During this time, Zhuowen was even more careful and did not let the shrub make too much noise. After drilled out of the shrub, Zhuowen arrived at the other side of the shrub. There was actually a rather hidden cave there. At this moment, there were traces of dim yellow light flickering in the cave, reflecting a few messy shadows. The black-clothed man observed his surroundings for a moment before entering the cave. Let's go take a look. Chapter 891. Self-directed and self-acted. At the back of the cave, there was an extremely inconspicuous groove. Zhuowen's eyes were sharp, and he discovered this groove at a glance. Thus, he shrank his body and squeezed into the groove, which was just enough to accommodate Zhuowen's body. Silently hiding in the groove, Zhuowen listened to the conversation in the cave. At this moment, there was a bonfire burning in the cave. A dim yellow light was emitted from the bonfire, illuminating the dark cave. Inside the cave, there were 4 black-clothed men with black face veils surrounding Leng Ying, who was lying limply at the side. Who are you? Leng Ying curled up her delicate body, and her beautiful eyes stared at the 4 black-clothed men in front of her in horror as she shouted. Until now, Leng Ying still did not understand why these 4 black-clothed men would appear out of nowhere and kidnap her. One of the black-clothed men did not say anything. He walked to Leng Ying's side and lifted her up. Then, he took the black spirit ring from her hand and casually threw Leng Ying to one side. Bang! Leng Ying struggled painfully, and leaned against the edge of the cave wall. She finally knew the purpose of these 4 black-clothed men. They were here for the spirit ring in her hand. That spirit ring is mine. What do you want? Leng Ying clenched her teeth, unwilling to let her spirit ring be taken away like this. Hee. It's yours. That's right. Now, I'll give you a choice. Either you erase the spirit imprint on the spirit ring, or you die. The leader of the black-clothed men held the spirit ring in his hand as he stared coldly at Leng Ying, and said in a hoarse voice. Just now, when this black-clothed man was about to open the spirit ring, he realized that there was a spirit force on the surface of the spirit ring that prevented him from opening it. Obviously, the spirit ring had already recognized its owner. Unless they removed the original spirit imprint, they would not be able to open the spirit ring. Leng Ying's pretty face was deathly pale, and her heart sank to the bottom. This spirit ring didn't belong to her in the first place, but was taken from Zhuowen. Therefore, this soul imprint belonged to Zhuowen. How could she possibly have a way to erase the soul imprint on this spirit ring? The black-robed man walked up to Leng Ying and placed the spirit ring in front of her. He said coldly, "You only have one chance. Either you undo the soul imprint on the spirit ring or you die." Feeling the murderous intent in the black-robed man's eyes, Leng Ying's delicate body trembled. This spiritual ring was not hers, so how could she know how to remove the soul imprint? "Looks like you're really not afraid of death." The black-clothed man's eyes narrowed. Unknowingly, a dagger had appeared in his right hand. He pressed it against Leng Ying's roar. The sharp coldness caused all the hairs on Leng Ying's body to stand on end. "Don't kill me. To tell you the truth, this spirit ring is not mine, and the soul imprint on it does not belong to me. I do not have the ability to erase it," Leng Ying hurriedly shouted. Are you saying that the ring isn't yours? Do you think we're 3-year-old children?" The black-clothed man's eyes narrowed. Soon after, he exerted force on the dagger in his hand. A glaring wound appeared on the snow-white skin on Leng Ying's neck, causing Leng Ying to involuntarily gulp. She shouted, "It's really not mine. It's Zhuowen, one of the young men that we rescued from the Ruan family's team. I got the spirit ring from that young man. When I took the spirit ring, that Zhuowen refused to remove the soul imprint no matter what. Therefore, I had no choice but to give up. I plan to return to Yen City and ask the family's experts to forcefully erase the soul imprint on the spirit ring." Hearing this, the black-clothed man's right hand paused. He stared coldly at Leng Ying and said, "Is this true? I'm really not lying to you 4 sirs. The spirit ring has already been taken by you, and now my life is in your hands." "Why would I need to lie to you 4 sirs?" Leng Ying hurriedly said. In the groove outside the cave, Zhuowen naturally heard the conversation clearly. The coldness in his heart towards Leng Ying grew even stronger. Dang dang dang. Suddenly, hurried footsteps sounded from the bushes outside the cave. Xiao Yanpu had already brought a group of people and was rushing towards the cave. Zhuowen, who was in the groove, naturally noticed Xiao Yanpu and his group. However, what made Zhuowen puzzled was that Xiao Yanpu had arrived too quickly. The black-clothed man had just arrived, and Xiao Yanpu was already able to find such a hidden cave. Although he was puzzled, Zhuowen shrank his body even further into the groove. This did not attract the attention of Xiao Yanpu and his group. Xiao Yanpu and his group directly rushed into the cave. At the same time, Xiao Yanpu loudly shouted, "Audacious thieves, you actually dared to hide in this cave. I, Xiao Yanpu of the Xiaoyan aristocratic family, am here. Quickly hand over Miss Leng Ying. Otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences." Xiao Yanpu's voice was very loud. Naturally, the few people in the cave heard him clearly. Among them, 4 of the black-clothed men's eyes flashed. However, Leng Ying's beautiful eyes were filled with hope. She knew that if Xiao Yanpu had arrived, then she would be saved. Big brother. What should we do? One of the black-clothed men stepped forward and asked the leader of the black-clothed men. Let's go. This Xiao Yanpu is not simple. Do not confront him directly. After the leader of the black-clothed men finished speaking, he took a step forward and directly rushed out of the cave. The other 3 black-clothed men behind him followed unhurriedly. Whoosh! 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 As soon as the 4 black figures appeared, Xiao Yanpu immediately led his group to intercept them. Among them, Xiao Yanpu was the most ferocious. He took a step forward and blasted out his right palm. He collided head-on with the leader of the black-clothed men. Puchi! The leader of the black-clothed men was directly pushed back by the palm. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were filled with dread and fear. This scene was coincidentally witnessed by Leng Ying, who had just walked out of the cave. Leng Ying's beautiful eyes were filled with extraordinary splendor when she saw the powerful black-clothed man being pushed back by Xiao Yanpu in one move. Don't fight head-on. Leave this place immediately. The leader of the black-clothed men shouted. With a wave of his right hand, he threw out 3 black balls. When the balls rolled into the crowd, they suddenly exploded, spreading out clouds of white smoke. The smell of the white smoke was extremely pungent, causing Xiao Yanpu and his men to retreat. Let's go. As the white smoke rose, the 4 black-clothed men turned into 4 black lights and rushed toward the dense forest on the other side. Let's see where you are going. Xiao Yanpu shouted. He took a step forward and chased after the 4 black-clothed men like a rock spreading its wings. In an instant, he disappeared from everyone's sight. While everyone's attention was on the black-clothed men and Xiao Yanpu, Zhuowen, who was hiding in the groove at the back of the cave, also quietly followed. Leng Ying walked out of the cave and looked at Xiao Yanpu's disappearing figure with a touch of worry in her beautiful eyes. She said to the group of the Xiaoyan family, young Master Xiaoyan went to chase after the 4 black-clothed men alone. I'm afraid it will be dangerous. Why don't you all go together? What do you know? Young Master Xiaoyanpu's strength is not as little as what you have seen. With young Master's strength, he will have no problem fighting the 4 black-clothed men alone. A guard in the group sneered. Leng Ying's beautiful eyes flashed slightly and she became silent. Just as the guard said, the strength that Xiao Yanpu had just displayed was indeed much stronger than the leader of the black-clothed men. Whoosh! 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 The 4 black-clothed men shuttled through the dense forest like agile monkeys. Their speed was extremely fast, but Xiao Yanpu was not slow either. He followed closely behind the 4 black-clothed men. Dozens of meters behind the 5 black-clothed men, a ghostly figure quietly followed them. This figure was naturally Zhuowen. The spiritual ring was too important to Zhuowen. He could not ignore it. After about half an incense stick's time, the 4 black-clothed men suddenly stopped on a thick tree trunk. They calmly stared at Xiao Yanpu, who was following behind them. Whoosh! Xiao Yanpu stopped in front of the 4 black-clothed men. His robe and long hair fluttered without any wind. His face was full of arrogance. Under the foot of a tree dozens of meters away, Zhuowen crouched and silently observed the confrontation between Xiao Yanpu and the black-clothed men. He wanted to see how Xiao Yanpu would snatch the spiritual ring from the 4 black-clothed men. After all, Xiao Yanpu's cultivation was at the peak of the ultimate emperor realm. The 4 black-clothed men were also at the ultimate emperor realm. Xiao Yanpu's chances of winning against the 4 black-clothed men were not as high as one would imagine. Just as Zhuowen was looking forward to the battle between the 5 black-clothed men and him taking advantage of the chaos, the 4 black-clothed men suddenly removed the black veils on their faces. They all knelt on one knee before Xiao Yanpu and said in unison, "Young Master." Young Master. Seeing the 4 black-clothed men's strange actions, Zhuowen was stunned at first. Then, he revealed a thoughtful expression. Xiao Yanpu placed his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "Have you obtained the spiritual ring?" "Young master, don't worry. We have already obtained the spiritual ring." The leader of the black-clothed men was a burly man with a full beard. At this moment, he carefully came before Xiao Yanpu and handed the spiritual ring he had snatched from Ling Ying. Looking at the spiritual ring lying quietly in his palm, Xiao Yanpu's eyes were filled with excitement. Among the younger generation of his family, only his elder brother, Xiao Yanqing Lin, had a spiritual ring. He had never had one before. Therefore, Xiao Yanpu's desire for the spiritual ring was no less than Ling Ying's. In fact, it was even more exuberant. After all, the spiritual ring was not only a storage space, but also a symbol of nobility. "Young master." According to Ling Ying, the spiritual ring does not belong to her. Therefore, Ling Ying has no way of removing the spiritual imprint on the spiritual ring. The burly man hesitated for a moment before speaking the truth. If the spiritual imprint does not belong to Ling Ying, then whose is it? Xiao Yanpu's eyes flickered with a cold light as he spoke with some displeasure. The burly man lowered his head and carefully said, "According to Ling Ying, she snatched the spiritual ring from Zhuowen. That Zhuowen is the young man rescued by the Ruan clan." "Oh. It's actually that Zhuowen?" Xiao Yanpu narrowed his eyes. This was not the first time he had heard of Zhuowen. Before they departed, he had heard of him from Ruan Lingyu several times. It seemed that Ruan Lingyu was quite concerned about Zhuowen. Chapter 892. Snatch the spirit ring. The four black-clothed men cupped their hands and turned into four streaks of light, disappearing into the forest. Only Xiao Yanpu was left standing there silently, holding the spirit ring in his right hand. No one knew what he was thinking. Just as Xiao Yanpu was deep in thought, a ghostly figure gradually approached. When it was less than 10 meters away from Xiao Yanpu, the figure suddenly launched an attack. 3 pairs of lightning wings grew out of its back, and its speed was so fast that it was dazzling to look at. "Who is it?" Xiao Yanpu roared angrily. Naturally, he also felt the figure behind him. He spun his feet, and his right hand blasted out behind him. Violent yuan power surged out. Unfortunately, Xiao Yanpu's palm only landed on one of the lightning figures. Then, he felt a gust of wind behind him, and a palm wind whistled through the air, directly hitting Xiao Yanpu in the middle of his back. You have a soft armor spirit treasure to protect you." The palm wind made direct contact with Xiao Yanpu's body. However, Xiao Yanpu only staggered a little, and his body almost lost its balance. He didn't show any signs of injury. The one who had launched this sneak attack was naturally Zhuowen. After all, Xiao Yanpu was a peak four-wheel emperor, and Zhuowen's cultivation was much weaker than him. Naturally, he didn't dare to face Xiao Yanpu head-on. However, the moment his palm wind hit Xiao Yanpu's back, he felt a trace of unease. Xiao Yanpu was wearing a soft silk armor, and its defensive power was not weak at all. Of course, if Zhuowen was at his peak, this soft silk armor would be nothing in his eyes. Unfortunately, Zhuowen's current strength was less than a tenth of his original. He had fallen from the sovereign realm to the ultimate emperor realm. It was really difficult for Xiao Yanpu to break through this soft silk armor. "Damned bastard! How dare you launch a sneak attack on me? I'll make sure you die a horrible death." Xiao Yanpu roared angrily. The palm strike just now was quite powerful. If he didn't have the soft silk armor on him, he probably would have been seriously injured. This person was too hateful. How could Xiao Yanpu not be angry? Boom! As he spoke, Xiao Yanpu reached out with his left hand and grabbed Zhuowen's right hand. Then, his right hand formed into a palm, and fiercely attacked Zhuowen. Looking at the terrifying palm wind in front of him, Zhuowen's face darkened. He coldly snorted, and his body emitted a golden light, 4 heads and 8 arms. Boom! The two palms collided, creating a terrifying gale. Zhuowen groaned and endured the injuries that were about to explode. 6 of his arms hugged Xiao Yanpu tightly while the other 2 reached out and took the Qiankuan bag from Xiao Yanpu's waist. Xiao Yanpu also saw Zhuowen's intention, and his face showed both shock and anger. The spiritual ring that he had just snatched was in his Qiankuan bag, and this person had snatched his Qiankuan bag the moment he arrived. It was obvious that his goal was the spiritual ring. A terrifying aura exploded. Xiao Yanpu pushed his peak ultimate emperor realm strength to the limit. He wanted to break free from Zhuowen's arms. Unfortunately, Zhuowen's arms were like the tentacles of an octopus, tightly wrapped around him. After taking out the spirit ring from his Qiankuan bag, Zhuowen suddenly let go of his hand. Xiao Yanpu, who had been accumulating his strength, was unable to exert any strength the moment he let go of his hand. His body staggered. Whoosh! Zhuowen stomped his feet, and 3 pairs of lightning wings unfurled. He turned into a bolt of lightning and disappeared into the depths of the forest. Xiao Yanpu steadied himself and gloomily stared at the departing figure. Although it was only a short exchange, Xiao Yanpu clearly saw the face of the person who had launched a sneak attack on him. It was Zhuowen from the Ruan clan's team. Isn't this guy just an ultimate emperor realm cultivator? How can he unleash such terrifying strength? Xiao Yanpu stood silently on a tree branch. Zhuowen's speed was too fast. In the blink of an eye, Zhuowen had disappeared. Xiao Yanpu knew that even if he chased after him, it would be difficult to find Zhuowen. However, Xiao Yanpu was even more shocked by the fact that Zhuowen was clearly just an ultimate emperor realm cultivator, yet he'd actually been able to successfully launch a sneak attack on a peak ultimate emperor realm cultivator like him. Moreover, Xiao Yanpu had even been forced into a rather sorry state during the clash just now. Don't let this young master see you again. Otherwise, this young master will make you suffer. Xiao Yanpu glanced in the direction Zhuowen had left in. His face was filled with depression. This kidnapping of Leng Ying had been planned by him, and the 4 black-clothed men were his subordinates. He had originally thought that he would be able to obtain the spiritual ring without anyone noticing. He hadn't expected Zhuowen to appear out of nowhere. It was easy to imagine how bad Xiao Yanpu's mood was. At this moment, the Ruan clan's team had arrived at the cave on the other side of the shrubs due to the commotion caused by the battle. They naturally saw Leng Ying, who had been rescued. Sister Leng Ying. Are you alright? Ruan Lingyu, Commander Ruan, and the others hurried to Leng Ying and asked worriedly. Leng Ying shook her head and said, I'm fine. It's all thanks to young Master Xiao Yanpu's help this time. Otherwise, I would have been in deep trouble. Sister Leng Ying. What happened? Where did those 4 black-clothed men come from? Why did they kidnap you? Ruan Lingyu was relieved when she saw that Leng Ying was fine. At the same time, she asked in confusion. I'm not sure either. These black-clothed men's goal was the spiritual ring. I believe that these people must be related to Zhuowen. Leng Ying's gaze was cold as she said. Hearing Leng Ying's words about Zhuowen, Ruan Lingyu did not refute. However, her face dimmed. It was obvious that she agreed with Leng Ying's words. After all, after the black-clothed men left, Zhuowen suddenly disappeared as well. Ruan Lingyu was not stupid. If someone said that Zhuowen had nothing to do with the black-clothed men, even she would not believe it. Back then, we were really blind to have saved such an ungrateful fellow. Lingyu, we should have just left Zhuowen in the wild. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been so many incidents. Leng Ying was not convinced. Whoosh! A figure suddenly rushed out from the forest. When everyone looked over, they saw Xiao Yanpu appear in front of them in a slightly sorry state. Young master. What happened? Why are you in such a sorry state? Xiao Yanpu's subordinates quickly went up to him. When they saw Xiao Yanpu's sorry state, their eyes were filled with shock. They knew a little about the true identity of the 4 black-clothed men. That was why they did not follow them. However, when Xiaoyan-pu appeared in such a sorry state in front of them, it was obviously out of their expectations. Young Master Xiaoyan. Are you all right? What happened to the 4 black-clothed men? Did you kill them all? Leng Ying quickly went up to him. When she saw Xiaoyan-pu's sorry state, she could not help but ask with concern. Xiaoyan-pu waved his hand and said helplessly, I chased after them and intercepted the black-clothed men. Naturally, the 4 black-clothed men were no match for me. However, the 4 black-clothed men actually had some accomplices. They were lying in ambush nearby and ambushed me, causing me to be in such a sorry state. Fortunately, I was alert and managed to escape from their encirclement in time. What? Accomplices? Young Master Xiaoyan, is Zhuowen one of the black-clothed men's accomplices? Leng Ying cried out in surprise. Her pretty face immediately turned ugly. Xiaoyan-pu sighed inwardly and said, Lady Leng Ying is indeed exceptionally intelligent. Among the group of people lying in ambush, there was indeed Zhuowen's figure. If it were not for my quick reaction, I'm afraid I would have died there. Hearing Xiaoyan-pu's words, Leng Ying gritted her teeth. She secretly cursed Zhuowen's shamelessness in her heart. At the same time, she felt sorry for Xiaoyan-pu's injuries. After all, he was injured because of her, so she naturally felt sorry for him. Ruan Lingyu, who had always protected Zhuowen, also remained silent. Clearly, she also believed Xiaoyan-pu's words and believed that Zhuowen was a spy and a traitor. Young Master Xiaoyan. Zhuowen's group should still be in this forest. Why don't we search this forest together? Perhaps we can find that group of people. With our group, we should be able to completely annihilate Zhuowen's group. Leng Ying was still unwilling to give up and suggested to Xiaoyan-pu. Xiaoyan-pu's eyes flashed. He had been waiting for Leng Ying to say this. He said, that Zhuowen is truly hateful. If our 2 groups work together, we can definitely find Zhuowen's group. Lingyu, Commander Ruan. Do you have any objections? Leng Ying turned her head and asked Ruan Lingyu and Commander Ruan. I don't have any objections. The main thing is still up to young Miss, Commander Ruan said with a smile. As they spoke, Leng Ying and Xiaoyan-pu's gazes converged on Ruan Lingyu. Seeing the 2 of them staring at her, Ruan Lingyu nodded and said, Sister Leng Ying, then you can lead the group and young Master Xiaoyan to search together. Be careful on the way. I'm a little tired and want to go back and rest. All right. Lingyu's body isn't good and shouldn't be tired out. Commander Ruan, you should bring young Miss back to rest first. I'll search the area with young Master Xiaoyan. Leng Ying nodded and replied. Commander Ruan nodded in response, then led Ruan Lingyu towards the tent, young Master Xiaoyan. Let's search the area together. That Zhuowen is despicable and shameless. We definitely can't let him go. Leng Ying turned her head and smiled at Xiaoyan-pu. Xiaoyan-pu nodded and yelled as he led his group and the Ruan clan's group into the depths of the forest. Xiaoyan-pu was also unwilling to accept that his spiritual ring had been stolen by that Zhuowen. Especially when that Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the ultimate emperor realm. This was a great humiliation to him and he definitely had to take revenge for this humiliation. As the teams of the Xiaoyan family and the Ruan family gradually searched the depths of the forest, a figure silently sat cross-legged on the trunk of a thick towering tree in the depths of the forest. This figure was none other than Zhuowen. Whether or not I'll be able to recover my cultivation depends on you. As he spoke, Zhuowen flicked his finger, and a ball of light appeared in his hand. Within the ball of light, there was a small person jumping around. Chapter 893. Tracking, Whitebrow Empyrean. Right now, you're the meat on the chopping block, and I'm the knife. I really don't know why you're still jumping around like this. Aren't you afraid that I will destroy your nascent soul? Zhuowen's eyes flashed with a cold light. He clenched his right hand and a powerful origin energy poured into the ball of light. Instantly, the nascent soul inside the ball of light screamed in pain and almost went limp. The little man in the ball of light was Celestial Master Whitebrow, whose physical body had been destroyed by Zhuowen. Not only Celestial Master Whitebrow, but the nascent souls of Celestial Master Guanghan, Celestial Master Xia, Celestial Master Huang Jiao, and Xiang Tianzuan were also in Zhuowen's spiritual ring. Out of the 5 Celestial Masters, Celestial Master Whitebrow was the weakest. His nascent soul had also been sealed by Zhuowen. Even though Zhuowen's cultivation had dropped too much and was only at the first wheel of the Ultimate Emperor realm, Celestial Master Whitebrow's nascent soul couldn't resist Zhuowen. Indeed, after being stimulated by essence energy for a while, Empyrean Whitebrow quietened down a lot. It was only to see him stare at Zhuowen with a venomous gaze as he said coldly, "Zhuowen, what are you trying to do? As you can see, my cultivation is only at the Ultimate Emperor realm, and my internal injuries are extremely severe. Therefore, I can only borrow the power of your nascent soul." As he said that, a gleam of light flickered through Zhuowen's eyes. He formed a claw with his right hand and suddenly grabbed the tiny person out of the ball of light. Afterwards, a suction force appeared from Zhuowen's hand, slowly absorbing the powerful energy within the Whitebrow Heavenly Exalt's soul into his body. "What? Zhuowen, you little bastard. You actually dared to absorb the power of my nascent soul to heal your injuries and improve your cultivation, you son of a bitch." The Whitebrow Empyrean was flustered and exasperated. To think that he, a dignified Empyrean, had actually been reduced to being treated by Zhuowen at this moment. To him, this could be said to be an extreme humiliation. However, no matter how desperately Whitebrow struggled, he was unable to escape from Zhuowen's grasp. After all his strength had been firmly sealed by Zhuowen. He was unable to use any strength at all. To put it bluntly, he was completely powerless right now. Zhuowen completely ignored Heavenly Venerate Whitebrow, who was still clamoring. With a squeeze of his right hand, surging energy from the nascent soul within the ball of light surged into Zhuowen's meridians before flowing along his meridians. The nascent soul of a celestial venerable was indeed very powerful. As this energy flowed through his meridians, Zhuowen could clearly feel a sense of smoothness. The accumulated injuries and hidden ailments in his meridians were all washed away by this energy. As expected of the nascent soul of a celestial venerable. This energy actually has such a miraculous effect. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled up. His eyes flashed as he squeezed his right hand again. An even greater amount of energy was sucked from the nascent soul of the Whitebrow Empyrean. The pitiful Whitebrow Empyrean could only howl within the ball of light as he cursed Zhuowen in his heart. However, this was of no use. Time slowly passed. The deep night gradually turned a little white. A sliver of light appeared on the horizon. The night was about to dissipate, rumble. A muffled sound like thunder rang out. A figure sitting quietly on the trunk of a thick tree slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was filled with vigor. "I broke through." As expected of the nascent soul of a celestial venerable. In just one night, not only did all my injuries heal, my cultivation has also jumped from the first wheel to the third wheel. Zhuowen slowly stood up. His face was filled with joy. Due to his injuries, Zhuowen had not dared to use too much of the energy within his body. This was because most of the energy within his body was used to suppress his injuries. Now that his injuries had healed and his cultivation had jumped by 2 levels, Zhuowen could unleash his full strength to his heart's content. Furthermore, Zhuowen's cultivation had already reached the early stage of the sovereign realm. As long as he had sufficient energy, Zhuowen would have no problem breaking through. Zhuowen believed that he would be able to completely recover his strength in a short amount of time. A trace of surprise appeared in Zhuowen's eyes as he looked at the slightly dimmed Whitebrow Empyrean's nascent soul in his hand. After a night of absorption, only a small portion of the white brow Empyrean's nascent soul had been lost. As expected of a celestial venerable. The energy within his nascent soul was so powerful that it far exceeded Zhuowen's expectations. Of course, it was also possible for Zhuowen to continue absorbing the nascent soul's energy to restore his cultivation. However, if he continued to absorb energy like this, Zhuowen's meridians would not be able to withstand it. After all, the meridians of the human body were only so big. If he absorbed too much energy at once and exceeded the capacity of his meridians would explode. For Zhuowen, that would be a very dangerous thing. As the saying goes, rice should be eaten bite by bite. The recovery of his cultivation could not be rushed. Zhuowen estimated that he would be able to restore his cultivation to its peak in a month's time by relying on the white brow Empyrean's nascent soul's energy. Whoosh! A black light shot out from the spirit ring. Xiao He, who looked like a dog, stood on Zhuowen's shoulder and said in a low voice, "Someone is approaching here. The commotion caused by your breakthrough may have been noticed by them." Zhuowen raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't need to guess to know who was approaching. It was most likely the people from the House of Few Words. However, Zhuowen didn't want to fight the House of Few Words just yet. After all, the House of Few Words had quite a few Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivators. Although Zhuowen wasn't afraid of them right now, he would still have to expend quite a bit of effort to defeat them. Thinking of this, Zhuowen stomped his foot. Like a rock spreading its wings, he flew towards the leaves on the tree trunk. He silently hid in the depths of the leaves and waited. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Not long after, the rustling of leaves could be heard. Soon after, two groups of people approached from the path ahead. The person in the lead wore a long yellow robe and had an elegant demeanor. It was the House of Few Words master. Zhuowen saw the group from the House of Few Words through the gaps in the leaves and sneered in his heart. However, when Zhuowen's gaze shifted slightly and landed on the other group, a cold light flashed in his eyes. Zhuowen was naturally familiar with the group beside the House of Few Words. It was the group from the House of Ruan that Zhuowen had followed back then. The leader of the House of Ruan's group was the cold-faced Leng Ying. "I clearly heard some commotion here just now. Why is it so quiet now?" House of Few Words came to the tree Zhuowen was under. He frowned when he didn't find anything. "Perhaps that son of a bitch Zhuowen heard the commotion and slipped away in advance," Leng Ying said coldly as she stood beside House of Few Words. "That's possible." House of Few Words nodded. When Zhuowen had stolen the spirit ring from him, he had witnessed Zhuowen's terrifying speed. If it really was Zhuowen, it was understandable that he had discovered their group and left in advance. "Young Master House of Few Words. We've been searching for a whole night and there's still no news of Zhuowen. What should we do?" Leng Ying turned her head and stared at House of Few Words with her beautiful eyes, full of inquiry. House of Few Words sighed and said, "Let's go back. Although that Zhuowen's cultivation is not high, his speed is extremely terrifying. Even if we find him, it will be very difficult to capture him. Moreover, I've also heard that the heavenly treasure ahead will appear in 2 days. When the Clear Void Valley people obtain the heavenly treasure, they will remove the blockade ahead." Hearing this, Leng Ying's pretty face was full of unwillingness. However, she also knew that House of Few Words was right. This forest was too big. If they wanted to find Zhuowen in such a huge forest, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Therefore, they couldn't stay here any longer. The group of people once again searched the vicinity, but did not discover anything. Then, they left this place with an unwilling expression. After House of Few Words had completely left, Zhuowen slowly walked out from the foliage. His right hand stroked his chin and his eyes revealed a touch of contemplation. He couldn't go back to the Ruan family team. Although he didn't fear House of Few Words, once the two sides met, it would inevitably attract the attention of the Clear Void Valley disciples. With the reputation of the House of Few Words, the Clear Void Valley disciples would definitely lean towards House of Few Words. Therefore, Zhuowen didn't want to provoke trouble. Kid! Didn't House of Few Words say? A heavenly treasure is about to appear in a radius of 100 miles ahead. Don't tell me you're not tempted. Xiao He stood on Zhuowen's shoulder with his arms crossed in front of his chest. His smile was quite lascivious. Zhuowen rolled his eyes. Xiao He's words were obviously because Xiao He was tempted. Now, he was encouraging Zhuowen to go. Although Zhuowen knew what Xiao He was thinking, he was indeed quite curious about the heavenly treasure ahead. Let's sneak in and take a look. After muttering to himself for a moment, Zhuowen still decided to go to the forest ahead to take a look. Early in the morning, a ray of the rising sun sprinkled down warm light. In the open space, the House of Few Words and the House of Few Words set up camp, waiting for the Clear Void Valley disciples to let them pass. At the entrance of the small path ahead, 7 or 8 Clear Void Valley disciples dressed in green and white robes vigilantly stared at the teams in the open space from time to time. The swords at their waists slowly swayed as they walked. Dang dang dang. Crisp footsteps suddenly came from the other end of the small path, attracting the attention of the Clear Void Valley disciples and the others in the open space. They saw a figure slowly walking over from the end of the small path. When this figure approached, everyone could see the person's face clearly. This person was about middle-aged, with a sallow complexion. His steps were unsteady and his breath was also extremely unstable. Looking at the sickly middle-aged man in front of them, quite a few people's gazes revealed contempt. Faced with these gazes, the middle-aged man acted as if he did not hear them. Instead, he walked straight to the entrance of the small path ahead. When this person arrived in front of the Clear Void Valley disciples, he was immediately stopped. This place has been reserved by our Clear Void Valley. If you want to pass through here to reach Yen City, you should wait a few more days. A Clear Void Valley disciple coldly berated. Looking at the middle-aged man who was stopped, many people in the open space revealed mocking smiles. There were even some who laughed without restraint. Ah! Wait a few more days. The sallow-complexioned middle-aged man revealed a puzzled expression, somewhat confused. Chapter 894. Zui Qingfeng's sudden change not only stunned the other people in the open space, even the Clear Void Valley disciples at the entrance of the path were stunned. When they completely reacted, 3 pairs of lightning wings sprouted from the back of the sallow-faced middle-aged man. He turned into an illusory lightning and instantly disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. So fast. The Clear Void Valley disciples guarding the entrance suddenly became dumbstruck. They wanted to chase, but that middle-aged man's speed was too fast. In the blink of an eye, he had already completely disappeared without a trace. Plop! The disciple who was sent flying fell to the ground at this moment. He hurriedly climbed up, his face still full of confusion. Until now, he still hadn't reacted. When he realized what had just happened, his face immediately turned green and white, extremely unsightly. Someone actually dared to break into our Clear Void Valley's reserved area. Truly audacious. We must inform the brothers inside. That disciple climbed up, immediately took out a signal lamp from his bosom and threw it. Immediately, this signal lamp turned into a wisp of exploding fireworks, diffusing in the sky. Everyone in the open space was also in a state of shock. They also didn't expect that someone would dare to break into the dense forest ahead. That was the area reserved by the Clear Void Valley. If that person was caught, that person would undoubtedly die. In the Xiaoyan family's group, Xiaoyan Pu's eyes narrowed. Just now, that sallow-faced middle-aged man used 3 pairs of lightning wings. If he didn't recognize incorrectly, wasn't that the secret technique used by Zhuowen last night? Could it be that the middle-aged man just now was Zhuowen in disguise? Xiaoyan Pu's brows slightly wrinkled as he thought to himself. Whoosh! In the depths of the dense forest, a figure flitted past and stopped on a rather remote tree trunk. It was the middle-aged man who had just broken into the dense forest. And this middle-aged man was precisely Zhuowen's transformation using the 100 transformation technique. Looking at the exploding fireworks in the sky, Zhuowen knew that this signal lamp should be to inform the Clear Void Valley disciples in the dense forest ahead that someone had broken in. Next, we have to be careful. With that signal lamp's warning, those Clear Void Valley disciples will definitely become extremely vigilant. On his shoulder, Xiao He indifferently said. Yes. Right now, let's find the location of that treasure first. I really don't know what kind of treasure the Clear Void Valley is looking for. Zhuowen nodded and retracted his aura as he continued forward. Several hundred meters away from Zhuowen, there was a rather quiet valley. Within this valley, there were quite a few Clear Void Valley disciples wearing green and white robes. This valley covered an area of several dozen miles, and its surface was covered with countless lush green vines. It looked full of vitality. Whoosh! 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 3 figures descended from the sky and arrived in the valley. The leader of the 3 figures was extremely young. He wore a long green robe and had a jade-colored wine gourd at his waist. He had long hair that draped over his shoulders and there was always a hint of a smile on his face. Behind the young man were 2 old men with extremely powerful auras. The 2 old men stood on either side of the young man as if they were his bodyguards. Senior brother Zui Qingfeng is here. It seems that the thing in this valley is really important. Within the valley, the disciples of the Clear Void Valley dressed in green and white robes all walked forward. Their gazes were blazing as they stared at the smiling Zui Qingfeng. This was the pride of their Clear Void Valley, a powerful existence ranked in the top 5 of the Flame God list. Greetings to senior brother Zui Qingfeng and the 2 elders. The group of Clear Void Valley disciples all walked forward and bowed to Zui Qingfeng with cupped hands. Their eyes were filled with admiration. Zui Qingfeng nodded. His right hand took the opportunity to untie the jade-colored wine gourd at his waist. He very naturally opened the cork and fiercely drank a mouthful of wine. He looked at the Clear Void Valley disciples in front of him and said with a hearty smile, "Junior brothers, you've worked hard. I wonder how the demon Buddha Bodhi tree is." One of the Clear Void Valley disciples walked forward and said to Zui Qingfeng in a low voice, "Senior brother, don't worry. After we found out about this matter, we sealed off the news. The only people who know about the demon Buddha Bodhi tree are our Clear Void Valley people." Zui Qingfeng nodded and said, "Let's wait a little longer. Sect Master will be here in a moment. We just need to guard this valley here." "What? Lord Sect Master is also coming?" That disciple's expression changed greatly. He did not expect that the demon Buddha Bodhi tree would actually make their Clear Void Valley's Sect Master come in person. It seemed that this demon Buddha Bodhi tree was extraordinary. Shio! Suddenly, an explosive sound came from the dense forest behind them. Soon after, Zui Qingfeng and the others raised their heads and saw fireworks exploding in the sky. Is that a signal light? Could it be that someone has intruded into this area that our Clear Void Valley has reserved? Should we send people to capture that intruder? He actually dares to look down on our Clear Void Valley. He's really abominable. The Clear Void Valley disciples in the valley all started to discuss. Their faces were filled with anger. It was obvious that they were extremely unhappy with the intruder. Zui Qingfeng frowned slightly and said indifferently, "No need to pay attention to him. The demon Buddha Bodhi tree exists in this valley. We just need to guard this valley well." Hearing this, the other disciples also quieted down. Zui Qingfeng had a great prestige in their Clear Void Valley. Now that he had spoken, the other disciples naturally did not object. Whoosh! Tens of meters away from the valley, on the trunk of a huge towering tree, a figure appeared out of thin air. This person's gaze was fixed on the valley in front of him. A strange expression appeared on his face. Xiao He. When I approached this valley, the great sun nirvana force in my body actually became restless, as if it was yearning for something. Zhuowen turned his head and said softly to Xiao He on his shoulder. It can actually cause the great sun nirvana force in your body to become restless. Could it be that this valley contains a treasure related to Buddhist energy? Xiao He's eyes revealed a trace of interest. Soon after, he said in a low voice, "Brat. You have to be careful. There are many clear void valley disciples in the valley ahead." Nodding his head, Zhuowen naturally also felt that there were many strong auras in the valley. Moreover, there were 2 clear void valley disciples wearing green and white robes guarding the entrance of the valley. It seems that I have to think of a way to sneak in. I want to see what exactly exists in this valley. As he spoke, Zhuowen quietly approached the valley, while Xiao He returned to the spirit ring to avoid revealing his identity. "Hey! Junior brother, have you heard? I heard that a Buddha demon Bodhi tree that is rarely seen in 100 years has appeared in this valley. For the sake of this Bodhi tree, our Lord's sect master is planning to come here personally." One of the taller disciples whispered to the shorter disciple beside him. The slightly shorter disciple's gaze became slightly focused. He said with some disbelief, "It can't be. Even the sect master has come. Is that demon Buddha Bodhi tree really that attractive?" "Nonsense. You don't know, but this demon Buddha Bodhi tree is really extraordinary. It is said that if a martial artist can cultivate under this demon Buddha Bodhi tree, their comprehension will increase by hundreds or thousands, thus reaching the great enlightenment realm. For example, if a martial artist with poor aptitude can cultivate under this demon Buddha Bodhi tree, his comprehension will increase by hundreds or thousands, and his cultivation speed can even catch up with the top geniuses. Do you think this demon Buddha Bodhi tree is important?" The tall disciple said with some disappointment. "So powerful? If I, junior brother, have the opportunity to sit under the demon Buddha Bodhi tree and comprehend Tao, will my cultivation speed be able to catch up with senior brother Zui Qingfeng?" When the short disciple heard this, his eyes were full of passion. "You should be able to. According to the ancient records, this demon Buddha Bodhi tree does have a miraculous effect on comprehension." Junior brother, if you have the opportunity to cultivate under that tree, your cultivation speed can really be comparable to senior brother. However, I'm afraid that such an opportunity will not fall on us. After all, we are just ordinary disciples. When the tall disciple said this, he was slightly dejected. He was very clear that such good things were generally reserved for the talented disciples in the sect. They basically did not have a chance. Dang! Suddenly, a strange sound came from the bushes in front of the entrance. It immediately attracted the attention of the 2 disciples at the entrance. "Who is it?" The tall disciple's eyes narrowed slightly as he coldly shouted. However, he was answered with a long silence, as if the strange sound was just an illusion. The tall disciple frowned slightly and said to the short disciple beside him in a deep voice, "Junior brother. I will go ahead and take a look. You stay here and guard." After receiving the short disciple's consent, the tall disciple walked toward the bushes in front of him. His movements were extremely cautious. When he arrived in front of the bushes, the tall disciple pushed aside the bushes in front of him, but he did not find anything behind it. Could it be my misconception? The tall disciple frowned slightly and shook his head. Just as he was about to leave, a right hand suddenly pinched his hands that were reaching into the bushes. Then, with a force, the tall disciple was directly submerged into the bushes. Crack! The low sound of bones cracking rang out. The bushes also violently swayed left and right, and a few leaves fell. "Senior brother." The short disciple at the entrance of the valley also noticed the abnormality in the bushes. He turned his eyes and the tall disciple actually disappeared in front of his eyes. This was too abnormal. As he said this, the short disciple slowly walked toward the bushes. His right hand tightly held the sword at his waist. If something went wrong, he would immediately shout for help. Rustle! Rustle! The sound of a body rubbing against the bushes rang out. Suddenly, a figure suddenly appeared in front of the short disciple. The short disciple's body trembled and he almost drew his sword. Junior brother. It's me. A familiar voice rang out. The short disciple fixed his eyes and immediately saw the figure that appeared in front of him. Wasn't it the tall disciple who suddenly disappeared into the bushes? Letting out a light sigh, the short disciple complained, Senior brother. You went into the bushes without saying a word. I thought something happened to you. You really scared me. What was behind the bushes just now? Chapter 895. Demon Buddha Bodhi Tree. The short disciple did not suspect anything. He only glanced at the shrubs, nodded, and walked back to the entrance of the valley. The tall disciple followed behind the short disciple. Junior brother. I'm quite curious about the Demon Buddha Bodhi Tree, so I want to go in and take a look. Why don't you guard here for a while, and I'll go in and take a look. I'll come back after I'm done. The tall disciple suddenly said. Hearing this, the short disciple revealed a troubled expression. Senior brother. That won't do. We were specially arranged to guard the entrance of the valley. If you leave without permission, it won't be good if the higher-ups blame you. Don't worry, junior brother. I'll just go in and take a look. This is just a small token. Don't think it's too little. The tall disciple suddenly took out a sparkling and translucent spirit stone from his bosom and nonchalantly stuffed it into the short disciple's bosom. The short disciple felt a chill in his hand, and immediately noticed the spirit stone in his hand. His eyes lit up, and he accepted it without a trace. With a flattering smile, he said, Since senior brother is so generous, I'll be a little unreasonable if I refuse. Then I'll have to trouble you, junior brother. The tall disciple nodded, and immediately entered the valley. However, the moment he turned around, a strange smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Needless to say, this tall disciple had already been replaced by Zhuowen. The real tall disciple had already died in the shrubs. This person was disguised by Zhuowen using the 100 transformation technique. The valley was quite large, and there were actually disciples of the clear void valley everywhere. At a glance, there were nearly 100 people, and their strength was basically above the Ultimate Emperor realm. The weakest was around the Ultimate Emperor realm. Especially at the center of the valley, there were 3 figures surrounded by many clear void valley disciples. The auras on their bodies were extremely terrifying, far surpassing the Ultimate Emperor realm. These 3 figures were naturally Zue Qingfeng and the 2 clear void valley elders behind him. At this moment, the 3 of them were looking at the depths of the valley. There was a forest of intertwined branches. The brownish-black skin emitted a rather frightening light. In the depths of the withered twig jungle, in the center of countless twisting branches and vines, a strange tree that was tens of feet tall silently stood there. The reason why this tree was strange was because there were 2 different colors on the surface of this tree. One side was golden, while the other side was shrouded in black fog. It looked extremely abnormal. Furthermore, in the place where the golden light shone, the figure of an ancient Buddha could be faintly seen. On the other side, in the place where the black mist lingered, the figure of a frenzied devil could be faintly seen. The Buddha and the demon, 2 existences that had been opposing each other since ancient times, actually existed in the same Bodhi tree at the same time. Even Zhuowen felt a tinge of fear at first glance. It is indeed the demon Buddha Bodhi tree. This thing has unimaginable benefits for a cultivator's cultivation and comprehension. Xiao He transmitted a message to Zhuowen from within the spirit ring. Comparing this demon Buddha Bodhi tree to the enlightenment cliff in the first layer of the Azure Dragon Palace, which one has a better effect? Zhuowen's eyes flashed as he asked Xiaohei. Naturally, this demon Buddha Bodhi tree is much better, Xiaohei said without any hesitation. However, this demon Buddha Bodhi tree will always be rooted wherever it is born. If someone wants to pull it out, this demon Buddha Bodhi tree won't be able to survive for too long. I wonder why these people from the Clear Void Valley are gathered here. Could it be that they plan to occupy this place? Xiaohei's voice contained a trace of doubt. The demon Buddha Bodhi tree would die wherever it was born. Once it was pulled out by someone, it would easily wither and die. Therefore, Xiaohei was a little surprised as to why these people from the Clear Void Valley would gather here and even muster such a large force. Zhuowen shook his head. He naturally did not know the real reason why these people from the Clear Void Valley were gathered here. Now, he could only wait. Thinking of this, Zhuowen silently sat cross-legged in a corner where no one was paying attention. He closed his eyes and rested. Although he had recovered from the ultimate emperor realm from the first wheel to the third wheel last night, this bit of cultivation was far from enough. He had to race against time to recover all of his cultivation. Zui Qingfeng and the two elders silently stood before the demon Buddha Bodhi tree with their hands behind their backs, as if they were waiting for something. As for the other disciples of the Clear Void Valley, they naturally would not act rashly in front of Zui Qingfeng. They also waited with them. Time passed by slowly. However, when the sun was high in the sky, an extremely terrifying aura rushed over from the distant horizon. Its speed was so fast that it was shocking. Whoosh! The sound of something breaking through the air rang out like thunder. Then, an imposing figure descended in the sky above the valley. This person's hair and beard were all white. His eyes shone brightly. His right hand held a sword and his feet stepped on a long sword. Greetings, Sect Master. When this white-haired old man arrived, many of the Clear Void Valley disciples in the valley bowed and cupped their hands together. Their eyes were filled with fervor. The old man slightly nodded. With a wave of his right hand, a surging power poured out. The bent disciples in the Clear Void Valley were all lifted up by this power. In an empty corner, Zhuowen also slowly opened his eyes. Naturally, he noticed the white-haired old man who had just arrived in the valley. Clear Void Valley's Sect Master, Qing Shuzi. What a powerful aura! Zhuowen muttered to himself. Previously, he had discussed the 5 great factions of Yen City with Ruan Lingyu. At that time, Zhuowen had also specifically asked Ruan Lingyu for some detailed information about the 5 great factions. This Clear Void Valley's sect master was called Qing Shuzi. It was said that his cultivation was at the heavenly venerate stage and he could be considered one of the giants of Yen City. Qing Shuzi nodded. Soon after, he landed beside Zui Qingfeng and softly said, Qingfeng. Did you discover anything? Zui Qingfeng respectfully bowed and said, Sect Master. Qingfeng has observed this demon Buddha Bodhi tree for a long time. I'm afraid that if we want to uproot this demon Buddha Bodhi tree and transplant it to our Clear Void Valley, the chances of survival are not high. The roots of this demon Buddha Bodhi tree are really too weak. Once it leaves the soil that nurtured it, it will instantly wither and die. Unless there is something that can completely seal the essence of the demon Buddha Bodhi tree's roots and preserve them, then we can try to transplant it. Qing Shuzi nodded. He knew more about the demon Buddha Bodhi tree than Zui Qingfeng and naturally knew how weak its roots were. No matter. Before I left the Clear Void Valley, I had already made preparations. This time, we will definitely be able to transplant this demon Buddha Bodhi tree into our Clear Void Valley. Qing Shuzi stared at the demon Buddha Bodhi tree in front of him with blazing eyes. Soon after, with a flick of his finger, a palm-sized 7-colored clay appeared in his hand. This clay emitted 7 different colors and looked rather beautiful. 7-colored leap clay. Looking at the 7-colored clay in Qing Shuzi's hand, Zui Qingfeng and the 2 elders narrowed their eyes and could not help but cry out in surprise. This 7-colored leap clay contains an extremely strong essence. If we can pull out the demon Buddha Bodhi tree and wrap its roots with this 7-colored leap clay, the demon Buddha Bodhi tree will not immediately wither and die. Qing Shuzi said with a faint smile. Zui Qingfeng and the two elders nodded. Qing Shuzi's words were correct. The 7-colored leap clay contained essence and could indeed protect the roots of the demon Buddha Bodhi tree very well. Qingfeng, the two elders, lend me a hand. Let's pull out this demon Buddha Bodhi tree first. Taking out the 7-colored leap clay, Qing Shuzi instantly arrived in front of the demon Buddha Bodhi tree. His right hand formed a palm and yuan power gushed out. Like a vast ocean of terrifying energy, he attempted to pull out the demon Buddha Bodhi tree in front of him. Zui Qingfeng and the two elders nodded and hurriedly came to Qing Shuzi's side. Similarly, yuan power gushed out from their palms. According to Qing Shuzi's method, they used this energy to form a suction force to help Qing Shuzi pull out the demon Buddha Bodhi tree. Boom boom boom. The instant the four of them began to pull the demon Buddha Bodhi tree, the demon Buddha Bodhi tree actually began to boil. The ancient Buddha in the golden radiance and the devil in the black mist moved at the same time. Simultaneously, they attacked Qing Shuzi and the other three elders in an attempt to stop their actions. If it were really the ancient Buddha and the devil, I would really be afraid. Unfortunately, you're just phantoms. Qing Shuzi's indifferent voice rang out. He pinched the sword fingers of his left hand and suddenly pointed at the void. Countless sword shadows rushed out from his body and turned into tens of thousands of sword rays, rushing toward the ancient Buddha and the devil phantoms. Boom boom boom. Explosions resounded. The ancient Buddha and the devil phantoms did not last long under Qing Shuzi's attack and were completely turned into ashes. Rise! After annihilating the ancient Buddha and the devil phantoms, Qing Shuzi furiously roared. Yuan power gushed out from his palm and a terrifying energy gushed out. Instantly, the entire valley began to shake violently. The other disciples of the clear void valley who were standing in the valley were all shocked. They staggered and almost fell. Under the combined efforts of Qing Shuzi and the other three, the demon Buddha Bodhi tree finally loosened. Soon after, the huge tree began to slowly float up. After a while, the entire demon Buddha Bodhi tree was pulled out by Qing Shuzi and the other three. What was surprising was that the roots of the demonic Buddha Bodhi tree were only a few feet long. It was no wonder that the demonic Buddha Bodhi tree would wither and die the moment it was pulled out. It was because its roots were too weak and small. Once the demon Buddha Bodhi tree was pulled out, Qing Shuzi's movements were not slow. With a wave of his right hand, the 7-colored soil turned into a 7-colored radiance and instantly wrapped around the roots of the demon Buddha Bodhi tree. Seal. At the same time, Qing Shuzi's hand seals changed. Immediately, a huge seal character appeared in the void. A mysterious sealing power poured out and completely sealed the entire demon Buddha Bodhi tree. Whoosh! Just as Qing Shuzi finished sealing the demonic Buddha Bodhi tree, a black light quickly drilled out from the ground below. This black light was covered in black mist. It stretched out its right hand, which was covered in black mist, and it was covered in sharp claws. Chapter 896. Mo Ing and Mo Daozi, Mo Ing from the Heavenly Peak Devil Palace. Within the valley, everyone was stunned for a moment when the Buddha demon Bodhi tree was snatched away by the black figure. Soon after, an uproar broke out. All of them recognized the figure that was covered by the black fog. It was the top genius of the Heaven Peak Devil Palace, Missouri Ing. Heavenly Peak Devil Palace, you are getting more and more presumptuous. How dare a junior snatch something in front of me? I think you are courting death. Qing Shuzi regained his senses and his face was ghastly pale. He pointed at the empty space with his right hand and thousands of sword radiances flew out and gathered in the sky. Soon after, the thousands of sword radiances turned into a huge void sword. Swoosh! The huge void sword fell from the sky towards the fleeing black figure at lightning speed. Mo-ing, who was shrouded in black fog, also sensed the terrifying void sword falling from the sky. His face changed slightly as he screamed and quickly retreated. Rumble! The sword of the void, which was hundreds of feet long, slammed into the front of the demonic shadow like a huge mountain, blocking the demonic shadow's path. Terrifying and sharp sword essence erupted from the sword of the void and swept towards the demonic shadow. Demonic shadow world. Mo-ing screamed and terrifying black fog spread out. It turned into thousands of demonic shadows and covered the sky. It was so dazzling that no one could tell which one was the real one. Boom! 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 Unfortunately, this sword intent also split into tens of thousands of rays and shot towards the tens of thousands of demonic figures. Immediately, the demonic figures that were pierced by the sword intent all collapsed, leaving behind only a single figure that let out a muffled groan and retreated. Mo-ing. You're quite bold to actually dare to snatch the Buddha demon Bodhi tree from my hands. You're simply courting death. Qing Shuzi's hair and beard fluttered as he looked at the looming demonic shadow in the black fog. His eyes were filled with bone-chilling coldness. Hee hee. Senior Qing Shuzi, do you think I would dare to come here alone with you guarding the valley? A mocking sneer came from the black fog. Eh. The demon Daozi from the Heavenly Peak Devil Palace is also here. Qing Shuzi knitted his brows and said in surprise. Boom. As soon as Qing Su's words left his mouth, endless black mist gathered in the void. Then, a huge demonic figure loomed in the black mist. Then, the huge black fog sank and formed an inverted funnel, looking like a terrifying tornado. At the mouth of the inverted funnel, a figure slowly stepped out. This person had black hair, black eyes, and was dressed in a black robe. Even his lips were eerily black. He looked like a real devil who was looking down at Qing Shuzi. Qing Su, is it really okay to slander me behind my back? Master Demon looked at Qing Su indifferently and said coldly. Whoosh! Demon Shadow turned into a black light and arrived beside Master Demon. Demon Shadow waved his right hand and the Buddha Demon Bodhi tree immediately cupped his hands and handed it over to Master Demon. Honorable Palace Master, the Buddha Demon Bodhi tree is most suitable for you. Only you are worthy of possessing this item, Mo-ing said respectfully. Master Demon nodded and took the Buddha Demon Bodhi tree from Demon Shadow. His pitch-black eyes revealed a trace of satisfaction as he said coldly, Demon Shadow. You have done a great service this time. I will reward you when we return. Demon Shadow kowtowed excitedly and said, Thank you, Palace Master. Chapter 897. A thought to become Buddha, a thought to become demon. The figure was like a ghost as it approached the soil where the demon Buddha Bodhi tree grew. Neither Qing Su Zi nor demon Dao Zi noticed this figure. After all, their goal was the demon Buddha Bodhi tree. Now that the demon Buddha Bodhi tree had been extracted, they naturally wouldn't pay attention to the forest of dead branches that was still empty. Zhuoan quietly stared at the ground beneath his feet. In the middle of the dead branches, there was a rather deep hole. This hole originally contained the demon Buddha Bodhi tree. Moreover, Zhuoan discovered that the soil here was actually pale gold. It looked extremely strange. When his right hand touched the pale gold soil, Zhuoan discovered that the great sun nirvana force in his body was cheering as it constantly surged and boiled. This golden soil has such rich Buddhist energy. Feeling the excitement of the great sun nirvana force, Zhuoan whispered with a blazing gaze. This is the Buddha demon dual pole soil. There is both Buddhist energy and demonic energy in it. It is quite beneficial for Buddhist and demonic cultivators. Kid, since you have a Buddhist technique like the Great Sun Nirvana force in your body and also have the experience of becoming a demon, this Buddha demon dual pole soil will be quite beneficial for you. Xiao He said to Zhuowen. Nodding his head, Zhuowen waved his right hand and yuan power spurted out. The Buddha demon dual pole soil below was instantly absorbed into Zhuowen's spirit ring. However, what disappointed Zhuowen was that there wasn't a lot of Buddha demon dual pole soil. It was only the size of a palm. Kid! Don't be greedy. You don't know how precious this Buddha demon dual pole soil is. After all, this soil grew a strange treasure like the demon Buddha Bodhi tree. In a sense, this soil is even more precious than the demon Buddha Bodhi tree. Xiao He cautiously said. Scratching his head, Zhuowen also knew that he was being too greedy. However, he seemed to have thought of something and asked Xiao He, since this Buddha demon dual pole soil is so precious, would Qing Su Zi and demon Dao Zi know about it? If he knew, he might even come back. You're right. This is not a good place. You are too weak right now. Let's not talk about demon Daoist or Qing Shuzi. Even Zue Qingfeng and Mo Ying, the two juniors from the Xuanzuan realm, would be enough to deal with you. Xiao He nodded. Just as Zhuowen was about to leave, Zhuowen discovered that the great sun nirvana force in his body had not calmed down. Instead, it was becoming more and more intense. Both the Buddha and Devil Polar Earth have been obtained by me. Why is the great sun nirvana power still unwilling to give up? Narrowing his eyes, Zhuowen's face revealed a rare expression of deep thought. He softly said, perhaps there is something under the soil that caused such a strange change to occur in the great sun nirvana force. As he spoke, Zhuowen's right hand formed a claw and reached down. Immediately, Zhuowen dug out a large hole. There's another world below. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. His right palm once again spat out an even more vigorous yuan power, causing the underground cave to continuously expand. Boom! Finally, a muffled thunder-like sound rang out. The cave had been broken open by Zhuowen to the size of a person, revealing a deep and serene passageway below. There's actually a passageway below. Don't tell me there's still some secret inside. Xiao He also arrived in front of the passageway in a flash. Her black eyes revealed a look of deep thought. Let's go in and take a look. As he spoke, Zhuowen led Xiao He into the passageway. At the same time, Zhuowen also carefully covered the entrance with soil. If he did not lift the soil, an ordinary person would not be able to see that there was another world below. Swoosh! Following the passageway, Zhuowen swiftly rushed towards the depths. In a short while, they had arrived at the depths. This was a rather spacious stone cave. The surrounding rock walls were protruding in an irregular manner. However, the instant Zhuowen entered this stone cave, his gaze was attracted by a statue in the middle of the stone cave. The statue's appearance was that of a young man. However, the strange thing was that this young man's appearance was extremely strange. The left side of his face was calm and peaceful, while the right side was overbearing and savage. It was as if two different personalities were present on this person's body. A thought to become Buddha, a thought to become demon. Buddha and demon cannot coexist. Both will eventually turn to ashes. A faint sigh suddenly slowly spread out in this stone cave. Subsequently, Zhuowen saw countless rock fragments falling from the surface of the strange stone statue in front of him. When all the fragments fell, a golden glow and a black glow simultaneously emitted from the stone statue. Subsequently, an ancient Buddha and a demon respectively stepped out from the golden glow and the black glow. The two illusory figures stared at each other without saying a word. Subsequently, the ancient Buddha and the demon struck out with their palms. Rumble. The golden glow and the black glow collided, erupting into a golden and black light pillar that rushed towards the sky. Under the effect of this golden and black light pillar, the entire stone cave trembled violently, as if it was about to collapse. Damn it! What's going on? I've only just entered. Why is this strange phenomenon happening to the statue all of a sudden? Zhuowen's footsteps staggered. His gaze became extremely solemn as he stared intently at the golden and black light pillar in front of him. He did not believe that the golden and black light pillar would appear so inexplicably. There must be something inside that caused it. Indeed, at the center of the golden and black light pillar, an oval-shaped object the size of a thumb appeared in front of Zhuowen. This is the demonic Buddha Bodhi seed. No wonder this place has the demonic Buddha earth and the demonic Buddha Bodhi tree. It's all to conceal the demonic Buddha Bodhi seed. Xiao He also noticed the oval-shaped object at the center of the light pillar and could not help but exclaim. Demonic Buddha Bodhi seed. Seeing Xiao He's astonishment, Zhuowen could not help but be moved. This was also the first time he had heard of the demonic Buddha Bodhi seed. Don't ask any more. Quickly keep this demonic Buddha Bodhi seed and leave. Right now, this demonic Buddha Bodhi seed has caused quite a commotion. If we don't leave now, I'm afraid we won't be able to. Xiao He quickly said. Nodding his head, Zhuowen did not hesitate. With a stroke of his right hand, the demonic Buddha Bodhi seed was stored in his spirit ring. Instantly, the golden and black light pillar that soared into the sky came to an abrupt stop as if it had never happened. Let's go. After putting away the demonic Buddha Bodhi seed, Zhuowen took a step forward and quickly flew up the tunnel. At this moment, the disciples of the Clear Void Valley were gathered outside the valley. They raised their heads and looked at Qing Su and Demon Daoist who were still in a fierce battle, as well as Zui Qingfeng and Mo Ying. They were all secretly cheering for Qing Su and Zui Qingfeng. Whoosh! A golden and black light pillar soared into the sky, attracting the attention of many disciples outside the valley. Why did such a golden and black light pillar suddenly appear? It seems to be coming from the direction of the valley. Could there be some kind of treasure in the valley? The disciples of the Clear Void Valley were all discussing spiritedly. However, the golden and black light pillar only appeared for a short period of time before disappearing without a trace, causing them to be even more puzzled. At this moment, Qing Shuzi, Demon Daozi, Zui Qingfeng and Mo Ying had all stopped fighting. They had also noticed the golden black pillar of light that soared into the sky. They had even discovered that the Buddhist and demonic energy emitted from the pillar of light was extremely dense. Qing Su's eyes flickered. He took a step forward and actually ignored Demon Daoist as he rushed towards the valley. Unfortunately, before Qing Su could take a few steps, a huge black sword fell from the sky and blocked his path. Demon Daoist. There are other treasures in the valley. Do you still want to continue fighting? Qing Su took a few steps back and roared at Demon Daoist who was behind him in a flustered and exasperated manner. I have the demonic Buddha Bodhi tree, and that's enough. Right now, I only want to see who's stronger. Could it be that the dignified Clear Void Valley's sect master is actually so cowardly that he's afraid of fighting? Demon Daoist's pitch-black pupils indifferently stared at Qing Su. His voice was still as cold and emotionless as before. It was impossible to detect any fluctuations in his emotions at this moment. You're a madman. Qing Su's expression was ugly. He knew that Demon Daoist was someone who wouldn't give up until he achieved his goal. Now that he was entangled by Demon Daoist, he had to admit that he was really unlucky. Qingfeng. Go to the valley and take a look. If there's anything, snatch it. Qing Su instructed Zui Qingfeng. His right hand formed a sword seal and rushed towards Demon Daoist. Come on. Demon Daoist coldly shouted. He swung the demon sword and a terrifying demonic power filled the entire sky as he rushed towards Qing Su. In an instant, the two collided once again and a terrifying power erupted. Zui Qingfeng nodded and coldly glanced at Mo Ying. I'm not going to play with you anymore. After saying that, Zui Qingfeng took a step forward and flew towards the direction of the valley. Mo Ying's lips curled up slightly. He did not continue to fight with Zui Qingfeng. Instead, he leisurely followed behind Zui Qingfeng. He also wanted to see what was going on in the valley. Soon, the two arrived in the sky above the valley one after the other. Then, they saw the scene of the valley riddled with holes. Other than the valley riddled with holes, there was also a clear void valley disciple in a green and white robe. At this moment, this clear void valley disciple was walking towards the outside of the valley. This clear void valley disciple was transformed by Zhuowen using the 100 transformation technique. After Zhuowen obtained the demon Buddha Bodhi seed, he rushed out of the tunnel without stopping. At the same time, he wanted to quickly leave the valley. Once he mixed in with the numerous clear void valley disciples, even if Qing Su personally came, Zhuowen wouldn't be afraid of being recognized. However, what Zhuowen didn't expect was that just as he was about to leave the valley, Zui Qingfeng and Moing actually came back ahead of him. Zui Qingfeng looked around the valley and didn't find anything suspicious. He couldn't help but slightly frown. Moing sneered and immediately arrived above Zhuowen. He looked down at Zhuowen and said, "What happened here just now? Speak, or die." The Zhuowen in front of him was only an ultimate third will emperor. Moing could tell at a glance that a cultivator of this level was like an ant in his eyes. Therefore, Moing didn't have any scruples when speaking. Zhuowen shook his head blankly and said, "This lowly one also doesn't know." Just now, the golden black pillar of light appeared for a very short period of time. I only saw the pillar of light emanating from there. As he spoke, Zhuowen pointed at the soil where the demon Buddha Bodhi tree was planted. Oh. Could it be that there's something else in that soil? You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.